The papers were already signed when he finally looked at her face. Vanessa Montgomery did not cry. She slid the pen across the mahogany table and smoothed her powder blue dress like she was smoothing away 8 years of a marriage that had refused to give him a son. 31. Black, beautiful, slender build with the kind of quiet posture that comes from surviving instead of hoping. She was a former philanthropy coordinator at a pediatric foundation. She had walked out of that mansion in Beverly Hills without asking for a single dollar. Kim Hyun-jae watched her go. 37. Oyabun of the Beko Pa, the White Tiger faction that laundered $1 billion a year through art auctions and charity galas. Slicked back black hair, charcoal suit, a discreet white tiger tattoo climbing the left side of his neck. He told himself he felt relief. 3 years later, he saw her again. She was crossing the pediatric wing of his own foundation with a tall black man in a linen shirt and 2 toddlers holding her hands. She was pregnant, 6 months, maybe more. She walked past him without turning her head. That night, his people brought him the file. She had never been the problem. He had. But what he did next? Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The little boy laughed first. He laughed the way only a 2-year-old laughs, with his whole small body, throwing his head back so far that the tiny cowlick at the crown of his hair caught the light coming through the tall glass windows of the pediatric wing. His sister laughed a beat behind him, copying without knowing why, her 2 little pigtails swinging, the gold beads on the ends clicking softly against each other, and their mother laughed the loudest of the 3, one hand resting on the small of her back, the other cradling the boy against her hip, and Kim Hyun-jae, standing 30 feet away in a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's cars, felt something inside his chest crack so cleanly that for a full second he could not remember how to breathe. He knew that laugh. He had heard it, once, in a kitchen in Bel Air, 7 years ago, when a burnt piece of toast had set off the smoke alarm at 4 in the morning and she had climbed onto the marble counter in his shirt to wave a dish towel at the ceiling. He had heard it exactly 1 time in 7 years of marriage. He had spent the last 2 of those years trying to hear it again and failing, and now here it was, ringing off the polished floors of a hospital wing that carried his family's name, and it did not belong to him anymore. Vanessa Montgomery did not see him. Or she saw him and decided, in the calm and terrible way she decided most things, that he was not worth turning her head for. He could not tell which. He was not sure it mattered. She was crouched down now, kissing the top of the little girl's head, murmuring something into the tight, neat rows of the child's box braids, and the man beside her, tall, brown-skinned, a beard trimmed so precisely that Kim's tailor's eye caught it before his heart did, was laughing too, one large hand resting lightly, easily, on the small of Vanessa's back, the way a man rests his hand on something that is his, and knows it is his, and does not need to prove it. Kim looked at that hand. He looked at that hand and he understood. In the flat clinical way he understood balance sheets and blood debts and the specific angle at which a knife enters a rib, that the man's palm was warm, and that Vanessa was leaning back into it without thinking, without even the smallest micro-hesitation, the way a person leans into a wall they have been leaning against for a long time and expect to keep leaning against for the rest of their life. Mr. Kim. The hospital administrator was still talking. Kim had not heard a single word in 11 seconds. He turned his head, half an inch, no more, and the woman in the pale blue blazer at his elbow flushed and looked down at her clipboard and started her sentence over. Something about the ribbon, something about the plaque, something about the donor wall on the far side of the atrium where his father's name would go under a pane of etched glass in Korean and English above a garden of white orchids that had been flown in from Jeju that morning. He nodded once. He had learned at 13 from a man who was now dead that a single nod was worth more than any full sentence. Full sentences committed you. Full sentences could be repeated back. A nod could mean anything the listener needed it to mean. The administrator smiled and stepped back, relieved, and Kim turned his face 2 more degrees toward the family in the middle of the atrium, and the crack in his chest widened. She was wearing powder blue. He noticed this because he had bought her, once, a scarf in exactly that color from a small shop off the Rue Saint-Honoré, and she had folded it into a drawer and never worn it, not once, in 3 years. She had told him, gently, the way she told him everything gently in those last 2 years, that it was a beautiful color, but not her color. He had accepted this. He had believed her. And here she was, in a crepe silk midi dress the exact shade of that scarf, the fabric moving around her calves like water, a cream-colored coat draped over her shoulders the way women drape coats in old films. And he understood, with the flat certainty of a man watching a building he built collapse in slow motion, that the color had never been the problem. He had been the problem. The color did not want to be worn near him. She stood up. She stood up in one long, unhurried motion, one hand smoothing the front of her dress, the other reaching for the little girl, who lifted her arms without looking, the automatic reach of a child who has never once, in her short life, doubted that her mother would catch her. Vanessa caught her. She caught her the way she caught everything, with a quiet economy of movement that Kim used to find restful and now, watching it happen for someone else's child, found unbearable. The little girl settled against her chest and reached up and pressed one small palm to Vanessa's cheek and said something Kim could not hear, and Vanessa laughed again, softer this time, and turned her head to kiss the small palm, and in turning her head her eyes swept, briefly, across the atrium and across Kim. Across him. Not on him. He felt the pass of her gaze the way a swimmer feels a current change. It moved over the spot where he was standing, registered a man in a charcoal suit, registered him the way you register a potted fern near an elevator, and continued on to the wide glass doors at the far end of the atrium, where a nurse was waving them through to the reading room. Her face did not change, her breath did not catch, her hand on the little girl's back did not tighten. She simply kept walking, the tall, brown-skinned man's palm still resting easy on her spine, the little boy on his hip now, one small fist buried in the collar of his linen shirt. She walked out. She walked out, and Kim Hyun-jae, Oyabun of the Baeko Pa, the White Tiger, whose signature covered 22 shell companies across 3 continents and whose name was spoken in exactly one tone of voice inside every Korean-owned laundromat between Wilshire and Olympic, stood in the middle of a marble atrium under a chandelier that his own foundation had paid for and could not, for the length of a slow 10 count, make his feet move. "Mr. Kim, the mayor's aide is..." A moment. His voice came out even. He was proud of that, in the small, exhausted way a man is proud of anything at all in the middle of a private catastrophe. He turned, at last, on the ball of one polished Italian shoe, and let the administrator lead him toward the mayor's aide and the photographer and the 3 board members in their good navy suits, and he shook hands, and he made a joke, in Korean, that made the eldest board member bark with laughter, and he lifted the ceremonial pair of scissors, and he cut the ribbon, and the flashbulbs went off, and behind his eyes he was still watching a woman in powder blue walk out through a set of glass doors with a hand on her back that was not his. He did not know he was clenching his jaw until his molars ached. He unclenched. He smiled the flat, correct smile his father had drilled into him at 9 years old, the one that made photographs look like statues, and he said the 2 lines of English the aide had prepared for him, and he said the 3 lines of Korean the reporter from the Kutla affiliate had asked for, and he thanked the pediatric director, whose name he had memorized on the drive over and would forget by dinner, and he thought, with an odd and floating clarity, she has children. She has children. She has 2 children who are 2 years old. 2 years old. He did the arithmetic in his head, the way he did arithmetic on the balance sheets of the Baeko Pa's front companies. Quickly, cleanly, with no room for hope. The divorce had been signed on a Tuesday in September, 28 months ago. The little girl in the yellow dress had a 2-year-old's face. The little boy had a 2-year-old's laugh. He was not a doctor. He was, however, a man who had spent 5 years financing a fertility program at the finest reproductive clinic in Seoul, and he knew, down to the day, how long it took a body to prepare itself, and how long it took after that to make a person, and the math worked. The math worked cleanly and quietly, and it did not require any hope at all. She had gotten pregnant. She had gotten pregnant almost immediately. She had gotten pregnant with twins. He held the scissors out to the aide with a hand that did not shake, because his hands, on the outside, never shook. Inside the sleeve of the charcoal jacket, the muscles of his forearm were locked so tight that the tendons stood up like cables under his skin. He remembered, without wanting to, the last specialist, the one in Zurich, the very old man with the very kind eyes who had held both their file folders in his liver-spotted hands and had told them, in careful English, that there was, medically, nothing wrong with either of them, that some couples, he had said, simply do not conceive, that sometimes the body knows. Kim had not believed him. Kim had believed, instead, the two specialists before that one, in Seoul and in New York, who had suggested, with the very slight lift of an eyebrow that men in their profession use to say things they will not put in writing, that the wife's uterine environment showed signs of chronic inflammation, chronic elevated cortisol, stress markers, they had said, long-term, long-term. He had heard those two words and he had not asked the next question. He had not asked what could cause a woman's body to run that hot, for that long. He had not asked what could keep a nervous system so raised that it stopped being willing to build a life inside itself. He had gone home instead, and he had told Vanessa, sitting across from her at the long walnut dining table in the Bel Air house, the one that could seat 20, the two of them at opposite ends of it eating grilled fish with the lights turned low, that perhaps they should discuss options. Perhaps, he had said, they should discuss whether the marriage itself was, in the medical sense, the obstacle. She had put her fork down. She had put her fork down and looked at him, and he remembered now, with a clarity that made his molars ache all over again, that her face had done something in that moment. Something small, something she had immediately smoothed away. A flicker, relief, maybe, or the beginning of it. He had told himself, then, that it was grief, that she was hurt, that she was breaking. He understood now that she had not been breaking. She had been surfacing. "Mr. Kim, if you'll follow me to the reading room, the plaque unveiling is—" Of course. He walked. He walked because a man in his position did not do the other thing, which was to stand still in the middle of a marble atrium and put both hands over his face. He walked with the administrator on his left and the mayor's aide on his right and two of his own men, in dark suits, 4 respectful paces behind, and he walked toward the glass doors through which Vanessa Montgomery had walked with 2 children on her hips and a man's hand on the small of her back. And when he reached those doors, he found that the reading room was already half full of donors and press, and Vanessa was not in it. She had turned left instead of right. She had, without knowing he was there, without needing to know he was there, taken her family the other way, down a side corridor toward the small garden courtyard, where the therapy dogs came in on Wednesdays, and the corridor door had closed behind her, with the soft, expensive hush of hydraulic hinges, and by the time Kim reached the reading room, she was gone. He stood at the podium. He read the words on the card. He said thank you to the doctors. He said thank you to the nurses. He said thank you to the community, and he meant, when he said community, the specific dry cleaner in Koreatown who had opened his cash register to his father in 1988, and thereby purchased, without knowing it, the seed capital for every good thing and every terrible thing that Kim's family had ever built. He looked out at the polite crowd and at the 2 rows of doctors in their white coats, and at the little brass plaque on its easel, still under its silk cover, waiting to be unveiled, and he thought, with a distant and almost bored clarity, that he would give the entire pediatric wing back, brick by brick, to have the last 2 years of his marriage back to redo. He would give it back. He knew, with the same clarity, that he would not be allowed to. He lifted the corner of the silk. The plaque said, in Korean and in English, "In memory of my father." He touched the letters with 2 fingertips, briefly, the way a devout man touches a doorframe on his way out of a house of prayer, and he stepped back, and the photographer's flash went off, and the doctors clapped politely, and the mayor's aide checked her watch and gave him a small approving nod, and Kim Hyun-jae excused himself. He walked, alone, down the corridor Vanessa had taken. He did not know he was doing it until he was doing it. The corridor was quieter than the atrium. The floors here were softer, some kind of hospital-grade linoleum designed to muffle the footsteps of exhausted parents, and the walls were painted the color of very weak tea. There was a mural of a whale further down. He passed a nurse's station, and no one looked up. He passed a small waiting area, with 2 empty chairs and a low table stacked with picture books. He reached the door at the end of the corridor, the one with the small round window in it, and he stopped, because through the round window he could see the garden courtyard, and in the garden courtyard he could see them. They were sitting on a low stone bench. Daniel Foster, whose name Kim did not yet know, but would know by dinner, had the little boy in his lap. He was holding a small red toy car in one hand and using it to describe, with great seriousness, some fact about the world that made the little boy nod slowly, as if receiving news of great importance. Vanessa was sitting beside them, her legs crossed at the ankle, one arm around the little girl in the yellow dress who was chewing thoughtfully on the end of one of her own pigtails. Vanessa was not smiling. She was instead doing something Kim had rarely seen her do in the last 3 years of their marriage. She was resting. Her shoulders had come down. Her jaw had come loose. The place at the base of her throat where a small pulse used to beat, always, at a rate slightly faster than his own, was now beating at the pace of a person who was, simply, alive. She was watching her son and her partner and her daughter, and she was, in the full and quiet meaning of the word, at rest. Kim did not open the door. He would not open the door. He understood, standing there with one hand raised toward the metal push plate, and then slowly, deliberately, lowering it, that he had lost the right to open that particular door somewhere around 18 months into a marriage he had thought at the time was merely difficult. He understood that whatever was on the other side of that pane of glass was not his to enter, and had not been for a long time, and that the most useful thing he could do, right now, in this specific corridor, was step away from the door, so that when they finally rose from the bench and walked back through it, they would not have to walk around him. He stepped back. He stepped back into the small alcove beside the vending machine, and he watched Vanessa Montgomery, through a round pane of glass no bigger than his own palm, tip her head back and close her eyes and let the pale Los Angeles sun fall across her face. And he understood, then, in a way he had not quite understood in the atrium, what had actually happened. He had not lost her in a divorce. He had lost her, piece by piece, over 5 years, in a house so large that a person could disappear inside it, and the divorce had merely been the paperwork that recognized what had already occurred. The Zurich specialist had been correct. The body had known, her body had known, long before her mouth was willing to say it, that the environment she lived in was not one in which a small new life could be safely built. Her nervous system had been protecting a child that did not yet exist, from a father who did not yet know he could not be one. 28 months. 28 months for her body to unclench. 28 months for it to say, yes, here, this one, now. He put one hand against the wall. He put one hand against the wall of a pediatric corridor in a hospital wing that bore his family's name, and for the first time since he was 9 years old and had watched his mother's coffin lowered into the wet November ground of a small cemetery outside Busan, Kim Hyun-jae felt his eyes burn. He did not let it go further than that. He did not ever let it go further than that. He let the burn crest and pass and settle, and then he took his hand off the wall and straightened his jacket and adjusted the small silver pin on his lapel, the one shaped like a tiger, the one that told the men who understood such things that the person wearing it did not require any further introduction. He turned around. He walked back down the corridor. Behind him, in the sunlit courtyard, the little boy named Ethan reached up and patted Daniel's cheek and said something in the private, half-invented language of very small children, and Daniel laughed. And Evelyn slid off the bench to chase a butterfly across the paving stones, and Vanessa Montgomery, 31 years old, wearing a powder blue silk dress the exact shade of a scarf she had once kept folded in a drawer for 3 years, opened her eyes and watched her daughter run. She did not look back toward the corridor. She had not, in fact, missed him. She had seen him. She had seen him in the first 30 seconds after walking into the atrium, standing under the chandelier next to the woman with the clipboard, and her body had done a very small thing that only she had noticed. Her stomach had turned once. Her jaw had tightened, briefly, and then, in the calm and terrible way she decided most things, she had decided that the man in the charcoal suit was not, any longer, a person she needed to greet. She had made that decision in less than a second. She had made it with the same efficiency with which she now packed diaper bags and paid electricity bills and returned emails from her partners at the design firm she had quietly built. From nothing, in the 22 months since she had signed her name on the last page of a divorce agreement. She had walked past him. She had walked past him on purpose. She had done it without cruelty, because cruelty took energy, and she no longer had any energy to spend on Kim Hyun-jae. She had done it because her son was tired and her daughter needed water and her partner had a 2 o'clock call, and none of those three things had anything to do, any longer, with the man standing under the chandelier. She had done it, most of all, because she understood something Kim had not, until today, understood himself. She was free. She had been free for 28 months. The paperwork had merely been the recognition. Kim Hyun-jae walked back through the atrium, past the ribbon still hanging in two neat halves from the brass stand, past the photographer packing up her lens, past the mayor's aide who was already on the phone to her next appointment, and out through the front doors of the pediatric wing, into the specific white sunlight of a Beverly Hills afternoon. His driver stepped forward. The rear door of the black sedan opened. He got in. The door closed. On the seat beside him lay a slim leather folder. Inside it were the guest lists for 3 upcoming Baekopa fundraisers, a preliminary auction catalog for the Sotheby's Asian art sale in November, and a discreet white envelope containing the quarterly settlement figures from 2 of the fronts in Koreatown. He did not open the folder. He looked at it the way a man looks at a plate of food set down in front of him at a table he no longer wishes to sit at. He thought, quite suddenly, of a night 5 years ago. Vanessa had come home late from a design meeting downtown, her hair still perfect, her lipstick still perfect, and she had stood in the doorway of his study for almost a minute before he had noticed her, because he had been on a call in Korean with a man in Incheon about a shipping manifest that could not be spoken about in English. She had waited. She had not interrupted. When he finally lifted his hand from the phone and looked up, she had smiled the small, correct smile she used with his associates, and she had said, softly, that dinner was on the table. That had been all. She had turned and walked away down the long hallway. He had finished the call. Dinner had been cold by the time he sat down. She had eaten hers alone, upstairs. He remembered thinking, at the time, that she was being difficult. He understood now that she had been being polite, and that the difference between those two things, in a marriage, was the difference between a person still hoping and a person already gone. He closed his eyes for a moment against the tinted glass. The sedan pulled out into traffic on Bedford Drive and turned east, and Kim Hyun-jae, Oyabun of the Baekopa, sat very still against the cool leather with both hands flat on his knees and stared at the back of the driver's head, and did not, for the length of the entire drive back to the empty house in the hills above Bel Air, say a single word. The house was waiting for him. The house was waiting for him. For 28 months. He would walk into it in about 20 minutes, and he would begin, without yet knowing it, the slow and terrible work of understanding what he had done and what it would cost, in the end, to undo it. But that came later. For now, the sedan turned onto Sunset, and behind him, in a small sunlit courtyard 4 blocks away, a 2-year-old girl in a butter-yellow dress caught a butterfly in her cupped palms and shrieked with joy, and her mother laughed, and the laugh rang off the courtyard walls and out into the open Los Angeles sky, and Kim Hyun-jae, sealed inside his black sedan behind tinted glass, did not hear it, and would never hear it again. The house in the hills above Bel Air received him the way an empty church receives a mourner. The gate slid open without sound. The gravel of the long curved drive whispered under the tires, and then stopped whispering. Kim Hyun-jae opened his own door before the driver could come around. He did not want a hand offered to him. He did not want a voice speaking his name in that soft, respectful tone that had followed him for the last decade like a shadow trained to bow. He stood for a moment on the drive and looked up at the front of the house. 3 stories of pale limestone, tall arched windows framed by dark bronze, a double door of black walnut carved by a craftsman flown in from Seoul the year he had married her. The 2 olive trees in enormous stone planters flanking the entrance, older than any relationship he had ever managed to keep. He had paid an obscene amount of money for those trees. He had believed, at the time, that owning them would settle something inside him. It had settled nothing. He crossed the drive and pushed the door open with the flat of his hand. The foyer was silent in the specific way that only very expensive silence can be. The great chandelier of hand-cut bohemian crystal hung above him unlit, catching only the pale afternoon that fell through the fanlight over the door. The marble floor stretched away to the base of the sweeping staircase. His footsteps struck the stone and came back to him, delayed a half beat, from the vault of the ceiling. He set the leather folder from the foundation on the console table by the door. He set his phone next to it. He did not remove his suit jacket. He walked, without deciding to, through the long gallery hall. He had not walked that hall in 28 months. He used the side entrance from the garage. He used the elevator up to his study. He used the corridor from the wine cellar to the kitchen when he wanted coffee at 3 in the morning and did not want to see his own reflection in the polished front hall mirrors. He had built for himself a set of roots through his own house that would let him live inside it without ever passing the rooms she had furnished. He had believed that this was efficient. He had not, until this exact moment, allowed himself to name it what it was. He passed the drawing room, the pale gray sofas she had chosen, the low lacquered coffee table, the pair of Korean celadon vases on the mantel that she had picked out with him at an auction in Paris because she said they looked like held breath. He stopped in the doorway and looked at them and felt something in his chest tilt very slightly, the way a full glass tilts before it spills. He kept walking. He passed the library, the dining room, its long walnut table set for nothing, 12 chairs pushed neatly in. He passed the small sitting room off the garden where she had liked to read in the mornings, her feet tucked under her, a cup of ginger tea cooling on the side table because she always forgot to drink it while it was hot. He passed the door of the room she had once wanted to make into a nursery. That door was closed. He stopped in front of it. He put his hand flat against the wood. The wood was cool. He stood with his hand there for a long time and he did not open the door. He had not opened that door in 28 months. He was not going to open it today, but he stood with his palm against it and he let himself feel, at last, in the empty house with no one to watch him, the exact shape of what he had done. He remembered the day of the divorce. He had not, in the 28 months since, allowed himself the memory in full. He had allowed himself edges of it. He had allowed himself the practical geometry of it. The lawyer's office on the 42nd floor of a tower downtown, the view of the ocean, the pen, the signature. He had allowed himself the numbers, because the numbers were clean and had cost him nothing that he had valued at the time. He had not allowed himself her face. He allowed it now. She had worn a cream-colored suit. She had cut her hair. She had come in alone, without a lawyer of her own for the first 30 seconds, and then a small, tidy woman in a navy jacket had come in behind her and put a hand on her shoulder, and Kim had understood, in that instant, that his wife had chosen her own counsel without telling him, and that this was the first decision she had made in 3 years that he had not been consulted on, and that it was also, in some way that he did not yet have words for, the last decision she would ever need to consult him on again. She had sat down across from him. She had folded her hands. She had looked at him once, briefly, the way a person looks at a stranger on a train they will never see again, and then she had looked at the papers. He had waited for her to cry. He had waited for her to accuse him. He had waited for the specific black-eyed grief he had been braced against for a year, the grief he had, on some level, been preparing to answer with money, because money was the only answer he knew how to give to grief that he himself had caused. He had a number ready. He had 3 numbers ready, escalating, depending on how she began. She had not begun. She had picked up the pen and signed her name on the first page. She had signed her name on the second page. She had signed her name on every page the lawyer slid across to her, in a small, careful cursive he had watched her use on Christmas cards to his mother, on the guest book at the temple in Gangnam, on the credit card slip at the restaurant on their first date. She signed without looking up. She signed the way a woman closes a book she has finished reading. And when she was done, she had set the pen down. She had folded her hands again, and she had raised her eyes to his, once, for a count of perhaps 3 seconds, and Kim Hyun-jae had seen, in the pupils of the woman he had married, a thing he had not been braced for at all. He had seen relief, not triumph, not rage, not even sorrow, a quiet, exhausted, endless relief, the relief of a swimmer who has finally been permitted to stop swimming, who has finally been told that the shore was never coming, and that she is allowed, at last, to put her feet down and find that the water was only ever waist-deep, and walk out. She had stood. She had thanked her lawyer. She had walked past his side of the table without touching it, and she had left the room, and the door had closed behind her with the softest possible click, and Kim Hyun-jae, Oyabun of the Baeko Pa, had sat in a leather chair on the 42nd floor of a tower above Los Angeles and understood, for a period of perhaps 4 seconds, that he had just been released by a woman he had spent 3 years believing he was tolerating. Then he had folded the understanding up. He had folded it small. He had put it somewhere behind his ribs where he did not have to look at it. He had stood and shaken his own lawyer's hand and gone down to his car and told the driver to take him to the office in Koreatown, and by the time the sedan reached the freeway, he had already begun to redescribe the afternoon, in the private language of his own head, as a business matter concluded on favorable terms. He had held that redescription for 28 months. It broke, now, in the hallway outside a closed door in an empty house, with his hand flat against the wood. He stepped back from the door. He turned. He walked, slowly, to the study at the end of the hall, and he sat down behind the desk of black lacquered wood he had shipped from a workshop in Busan, and he opened his phone, and he called a number he had not called in 18 months. The man who answered did not say hello. "Song-si," Kim said, in Korean, in the quiet, even voice he used for the operations that had no name in any ledger. "I need information." "On whom?" "Hyungnim." Kim closed his eyes. He said her name. There was a small pause on the other end of the line. Song-si had been Kim's private investigator for 9 years. Song-si had done many things for Kim Hyun-jae. Song-si had never, in 9 years, been asked to investigate the woman Kim had married. "A live information," Kim said, "not surveillance. I do not want her followed. I want to know what is public. Medical, if you can reach it cleanly. Financial, only the surface. The man she is with, the children, everything that a friend of the family, an old friend, would already know, if the family had let him remain a friend." "Understood, Hyungnim." "Song-si." "Yes, Hyungnim. If any part of this can only be obtained by a method that would frighten her, do not obtain it. Come back and tell me it cannot be done." There was a longer pause. Then Song-si said, very quietly, in a tone Kim had never heard from him in 9 years, "Yes, Hyungnim." Kim ended the call. He sat behind the desk for a long time and watched the light move across the wall. The report came, on encrypted courier, 72 hours later. Kim received it in the study at 11 at night. He had eaten nothing since morning. He had drunk 2 glasses of water and half a cup of black tea, and he had canceled 3 meetings, one of them with a South Korean deputy consul who did not enjoy being canceled on. He had spent most of the 72 hours at the window of the study, looking out over the lights of Los Angeles from a house that had begun, since the afternoon in the hall, to feel like a set that someone had built for a play that had already closed. The courier was a woman in her 50s in a plain black coat who did not speak. She placed a thin manila envelope on the desk. She waited until Kim inclined his head. She left. Kim opened the envelope. There were 6 pages inside. The first was a cover sheet in Song-si's small, neat English hand. It said only, in blue ink, at the top, "Hyungnim, please read all 6 pages before you draw any conclusion. Song." Kim read the second page. It contained a summary of Vanessa Montgomery's current life in 6 paragraphs. She had married Daniel Foster 14 months after the divorce. They had had twins by IVF 11 months later. She was, at the moment of the report, 13 weeks pregnant with a 3rd child. This one conceived without medical assistance, in the ordinary way, in the 3rd month of trying. The doctor's name was included. The clinic was included. There was no photograph. Song-si had, without being told, understood that Kim did not want a photograph. Kim read the paragraph 3 times. He set the page down. He read the 3rd. The 3rd page was Song-si's summary of the medical file from the fertility clinic Kim and Vanessa had used 4 years ago in Beverly Hills, during the 18 months in which they had tried to conceive and failed, and tried again, and failed, and tried again. Song-si had obtained it, he wrote in a small parenthetical, through a route that did not involve any person who knew Vanessa's name. Kim read the summary. He read it slowly. He read it a second time. He read a specific paragraph in the middle, 3 sentences long, 4 times. Vanessa Montgomery's reproductive markers, at the time of testing, had been within normal range, all of them. Her ovarian reserve had been strong. Her hormonal profile had been unremarkable. There had been no structural abnormality, no autoimmune indicator, no genetic flag. The clinic had in fact concluded the workup with a note in the file describing her as reproductively healthy, likely fertile, cause of failure to conceive not identified in this patient. Recommend evaluation of partner and lifestyle factors. The evaluation of the partner had never been completed. Kim remembered now, being told that a follow-up appointment had been scheduled for him. He remembered canceling it. He remembered canceling the rescheduled one. He remembered a third appointment that had been made and canceled by his assistant because he had been in Macau. He had not, at the time, thought of these cancellations as connected to anything. He set the third page down. He read the fourth. The fourth page was headed, in Song-si's careful hand, Endocrinology, Medical Literature Summary, Layman's Korean. Song-si had, without being asked, gone and read half a shelf of journal articles and translated the relevant part into a single page. Chronic elevation of cortisol, Song-si had written, in the plain declarative sentences of a man who had never been to medical school and did not pretend otherwise, suppresses the reproductive axis in women. It disrupts ovulation. It thins the uterine lining. It reduces the probability of implantation. In some women, it does this severely. In some, mildly. In some, not at all. The effect is dose-dependent, cumulative, and reversible. Removal of the stressor generally restores function within 12 to 18 months. Song-si had written a further sentence at the bottom of the page. Hyung-nim, I am not a doctor. I make no claim. I only place these pages side by side because the dates line up. Kim placed his hand flat on the desk and did not move it for a long time. He read the fifth page. The fifth page was a timeline. It was not editorial. It was only dates. The date of their first anniversary. The date of the first miscarriage, 7 weeks. The date of a raid on a Baco Pa warehouse in San Pedro that had gone badly and had required Kim's personal attention for a fortnight. The date of the second miscarriage, 9 weeks, 2 months later. The date of the shooting in Koreatown that had killed one of his lieutenants and had required Kim to spend 6 weeks locking down a war he was very careful never to speak of at home. The date of the third loss, at 11 weeks. The date of a diplomatic incident with a rival Oyabun in Osaka. The date of the cold silence at the breakfast table she had begun to keep. The date, 8 months later, of the divorce. Kim read the timeline once. He did not read it again. He read the 6th page. The 6th page had only one sentence on it. Hyung-nim. The failure was not in her body. It was in the house. Kim Hyun-jae, Oyabun of the Baco Pa, put the 6 pages down in a neat stack on the black lacquered desk. He aligned the edges with the pad of his index finger. He stood up from the chair. He walked to the window and put both hands flat against the cold glass. He looked out at the city he owned parts of, and he did not, for the first time in a very long time, see any of it. He saw her, instead. He saw her at a breakfast table, in a peach-colored robe, pushing food around a plate. He saw her at the top of the stairs in the small hours of the morning, one hand on the banister, waiting for a call to end. He saw her at a charity gala in a gown he had chosen for her, smiling at a Korean consul's wife, her spine perfectly straight, her hands cold in his when he took them. He saw her in the bathroom of the primary suite in the middle of a night that he had, at the time, catalogued as unimportant, sitting on the tile floor with her back against the bathtub and her knees drawn up and her forehead pressed to her knees, not making any sound, because she had learned by that point that sound in this house traveled. He saw the house he had built around her. He had built it out of marble and money and men with earpieces and encrypted phones that rang at 3 in the morning and did not stop ringing. He had built it out of the specific cortisol of a woman who never knew, from 1 hour to the next, whether her husband was coming home or being brought home. He had built it out of gala dinners at which she had to smile at men whose names she could not be told. He had built it out of the small, unbroken drumbeat of low-level fear that runs, day and night, through the body of any person who lives with a man like Kim Hyun-jae and is not permitted to ask any question that would allow her to name what she is afraid of. And then he had, when her body had done what a body does under such a drumbeat, sat across from her at a specialist's desk in Beverly Hills and let her hear the words that had cracked something in her, because the specialist had spoken in the careful, blameless language of medicine, and Kim had not, at any point in that appointment, or in the 18 months that followed, said the sentence that was true. The sentence that was true was, "The problem is me. The problem is the life I have made you live inside." He had not said it. He had, instead, allowed the sentence, "She cannot," to grow, unopposed, in the silence between them, until it had become the shape of their marriage, and then, at length, the reason for its end. Kim Hyun-jae stood at the window of the empty house above Bel Air at 11:30 at night, and he understood, at last, in one clean, unbroken piece, what he had done to his wife. He did not weep. He was not a man who wept. He stood at the window with his hands flat on the glass, and he let the understanding move through him the way a slow tide moves through a harbor, lifting every hull off every mooring, and setting each of them, for the space of one silent hour, adrift. When the hour was over, he stepped back from the window. He walked to the desk. He picked up the 6 pages. He folded them once, cleanly, along the center line, and he placed them inside the breast pocket of his suit jacket, over his heart, where they would remain for the next 9 days. He picked up his phone. He did not call Song-si. He did not call his lawyer. He did not call the deputy consul he had canceled on. He opened a browser in a private window and he typed, with 2 fingers, into a search bar, the name of a charity gala scheduled at the Beverly Wilshire in 4 days' time. He knew the gala. His foundation had bought a table at it every year for 6 years. He also knew, because he made it his business to know, that a certain edtech entrepreneur based in Pasadena had recently been added to the host committee, and that this entrepreneur's wife, 3 months into a quiet 3rd pregnancy, would very likely be at his side. Kim closed the browser. He walked out of the study. He walked down the long gallery hall. He did not stop at any of the doors. He walked into the primary suite for the first time in 28 months, and he took off his suit jacket, and he hung it in the closet, and he lay down on top of the covers of the bed on the side that had once been his, and he stared at the ceiling until the sky above Bel Air began to turn the color of ash. He did not sleep. At 6 in the morning he rose. He showered. He dressed in a fresh charcoal suit. He drank half a glass of water. He drove himself, without a driver, down the hill and through the still quiet streets of Beverly Hills to a small florist on Cannon Drive that had been open for 40 years, and he stood on the sidewalk in front of the closed shutter and waited for the owner to arrive. When she arrived at 7 and unlocked the door, he went in with her, and he ordered, in a low, even voice, a single arrangement of white peonies and pale blue delphinium to be delivered to a specific address in Pasadena at 9 that morning, with no card attached. The florist, an elderly Iranian woman who had known his face for 6 years, looked at him for a long moment before she wrote the address down. "No card, Mr. Kim?" she said. "No card," he said. "They will not know who it is from." "They will," he said, "or they will not. Either is acceptable." She wrote the order. She did not ask any further question. He paid in cash. He left. He stood for a moment on the sidewalk after the shutter had closed behind him. The street was still empty. A garbage truck moved slowly at the far end of the block. A woman in running clothes crossed at the light and did not look at him. He watched her go, and he thought, without wanting to, of the way Vanessa had once run in the mornings along the bridle path in the canyon, in a pale gray top and black leggings, her hair tied back, coming into the kitchen at 7, flushed and quiet, and pouring herself a glass of water at the sink, and standing there with her back to him, drinking it in small, careful sips. He had, at the time, been on the phone. He had, at the time, held up one finger to her without turning around. She had set the glass in the sink and left the kitchen without a word, and he had, at the time, taken this as a small courtesy, an accommodation of his work, and had felt, for perhaps 2 seconds, mildly pleased with the marriage. He put a hand on the roof of the car. He steadied himself against it. He waited until the small hot pressure behind his eyes had passed. He got in. He drove back up into the hills with the sun climbing behind him. He took the long way, because he did not, this morning, want to arrive quickly. He drove past the reservoir. He drove past the gated turnoff to a house he had once bought and never lived in. He drove past a coyote crossing the road at Mulholland with a small pale thing in its jaws, and the coyote paused and looked at him through the windshield with yellow, disinterested eyes before it went on. He watched it go. He felt, obscurely, that the coyote had seen him more clearly than any of the men who worked for him had seen him in 10 years. He drove the rest of the way in silence, and he understood, without any drama and without any hope, that he had just taken the first step of a road he did not yet see the length of, and that the road did not, at any point along its length, lead back to the woman in the courtyard on Bedford Drive. It only led, if he walked it correctly, to a place from which he could stand, at last, and watch her walk away from him without carrying any of him with her. He put both hands on the wheel. He drove up the hill. Behind him, 4 blocks from a garden in Pasadena, a delivery van was already loading white peonies into a refrigerated crate, and the day, which would end very badly for him on a sidewalk on Rodeo Drive, had not yet, at that hour, begun. The hill road to the White Tiger compound wound through eucalyptus and marine fog. Kim Hyun-jae drove with both hands on the wheel, the way a man drives when his body is trying to hold something invisible in place. His charcoal jacket lay folded on the passenger seat. The black silk tie was loose at the throat. The tattoo of the White Tiger climbed the left side of his neck like a second pulse, and above the gate, the security camera turned its lens to follow the car in. He had not looked at his phone since Rodeo Drive. He did not want to see the message he already knew was there. Inside the compound, the koi pond breathed. Gravel raked into circles. 2 guards at the door, hands at their belts, bowed at the waist. He walked past them without answering the bow. In the receiving room, 3 men were waiting for him, and one of them was already smoking. The one smoking was Park Chul-soo, 61, underboss of the Baeko Pa, a man who had killed for Kim's father and had never, in all the years since, allowed himself to be photographed. He sat on the low leather bench in a black suit, ash falling into a jade tray. Beside him, the accountant, Yoon, a small man with rimless glasses, and by the window, the enforcer, Beck, who did not sit. "Oyabun," Park said, without standing. "You went to Beverly Hills. You saw her." Kim removed his jacket. He hung it on the brass hook by the door. He did not answer. "You went alone," Park said. "In daylight. You waited on a public sidewalk for a woman whose face is in the FBI file on your ex-wife. Her name is in the file. Hyun-jae. Do you understand what that means?" "It means," Kim said, "that she is a private citizen and that no file will touch her." Park exhaled smoke through his nose. He looked at the accountant. The accountant opened a slim folder and slid a photograph across the low table. It was Daniel Foster, taken from a distance, on the sidewalk in front of a glass front office in Culver City. In the photograph, Daniel was holding the twin girl on his hip, his hand cupped protectively around the back of her head. "The husband," Park said. "The new one. He is 34. He has a company. He has 2 children. He has a woman who used to belong to us." "She did not belong to us," Kim said. "She belonged to you," Park corrected. "Which is the same thing. We watched her for 6 years. We paid for the clinic. We paid for the doctor in Seoul. We paid for the doctor in Zurich. We paid for the doctor at Cedars. The organization paid, Hyun-jae. The organization is not sentimental, but the organization does not forget an investment either." Kim sat. Slowly. The chair was low and the room was cold. "Say what you came to say." Park stubbed out the cigarette. He folded his hands. "The husband is a problem," he said. "Not because he is dangerous, because he is calm. A calm man in her life makes her calm. A calm woman does not come back. If something were to happen to him, on the freeway, in a parking lot, at his office late at night, she would grieve. She would need shelter. She would need a man she already trusted. She would come to you. That is how these things work. That is how they have always worked." The koi pond breathed. Kim did not move. "You are proposing," he said, "to kill the father of the children she is carrying." "I am proposing," Park said, "to correct an error. Your error. Hyun-jae, you divorced her in front of the entire organization. You said she was barren. You said the line was dead. Then you built a hospital wing with her old name on the wall. Then you drove yourself to Rodeo Drive at 11 in the morning like a boy in love. The men are talking. The council is talking. In Seoul, they are asking whether the Baeko Pa still has a head or only a heart. She is carrying twins, Kim said. Park blinked once. What? Twins, Kim said. The husband's. She is 19 weeks. The room adjusted. The accountant's pen stopped. Beck, at the window, turned his head half a degree. Park looked, for the first time in years, briefly old. "Then it is worse than I thought," he said quietly. "You cannot go back to a woman carrying another man's twins. She will not have you. She will never have you. And every week she carries them. The story travels further. By spring, the Yamaguchi will know. The Sun Yeon will know. The council will know that the Oyabun of the Bako Pa was made a fool of by a woman he threw away. She was not thrown away. She was thrown away, Hyunjae, in front of witnesses. You signed a paper, you paid her off. You closed the door. What you are doing now is not love. It is a man walking backward through his own reputation. Kim said nothing. So we correct it, Park said. Quietly, cleanly. The husband has a heart condition on file at Cedars, minor, but on file. A cardiac event at the office. No shooter, no car, no story. She grieves. The children have no father. 6 months pass. A widow with twins in a big empty house in Pasadena needs help. You are already the largest donor to the pediatric wing where her children are patients. You are already known to the family. You appear. You are patient. You wait a year, 2 years. She comes back. The line continues. The organization continues. The story rewrites itself. She was never divorced. She was only away. Kim looked at him. He looked at the accountant. He looked at Bake by the window. He understood, in that room, that the plan was already in motion, that the photograph had already been taken, that someone at Cedars had already been paid to change a chart, that the cardiac event was not a hypothesis, it was a schedule. When, he said. Park did not pretend not to understand. Thursday, he said. He works late on Thursdays. She takes the children to her mother's on Thursdays. The office is empty by 9. 2 days. Kim breathed in through his nose. He counted, silently, in Korean, the way his grandmother had taught him to count when he was afraid as a child. 1, 2, 3, 4. He stopped at 7. 7, in the old superstition, was the number of a door that had not yet closed. No, he said. Park tilted his head. No. No, Kim repeated. You will not touch him. You will not touch her. You will not touch the children. You will not go near the house in Pasadena, near the office in Culver City, near the clinic where she is being seen. You will not speak of them again in this room. Do you understand me? Park was very still. Oyabun, he said, I am not asking permission. The words landed like a stone in shallow water. Kim stood. Slowly, the way a man stands when he has just realized that the room he is in is not, and has never been, his room. He walked to the window. Below, the koi and the pond moved in their slow, uninterested circles. Beyond them, the marine fog was lifting, and the city, in its brown and gold and blue, opened toward the sea. He understood then everything. He understood that for 6 years he had believed the Bako Pa was a body he commanded, and it had, in fact, been a body that commanded him. He understood that Vanessa had not left a man. She had escaped a system, and the system had never noticed she was gone, because the system had already scheduled her return. He understood that the mansion in Pasadena had not been a home. It had been a device to produce an heir, to launder a name, to protect a fortune. And the device had failed, not because Vanessa was broken, but because the device itself was a slow poison, and she had been the only living thing inside it. He understood that every doctor, every clinic, every specialist in Seoul and Zurich and Los Angeles had been part of the device, and that the device would now, if he did nothing, kill a man in a Culver City office on Thursday night, so that the device could go on. His empire was her prison. He turned from the window. Park Hyung, he said. He used the old word, older brother, the word his father had used. You have served this house for 40 years. 42, Park said. 42. Kim inclined his head. Then hear me. I am the Oyabun of the Bako Pa. I am my father's son. I am the seal on every account and the name on every deed. Thursday will not happen. Not this Thursday. Not any Thursday. If a hand is raised toward Daniel Foster, toward Vanessa Montgomery, toward the boy or the girl or the children she is carrying, that hand will be cut from the arm that raised it. I do not care whose arm. Do you understand me? Silence. I understand you, Park said. But the council will not. The council, Kim said, is a problem I will solve. Not with you. Not tonight. He walked back to the chair. He did not sit. He rested one hand, briefly, on its back. Leave me, he said. All 3 of you. Now. They left. The accountant first, with the folder pressed against his chest. Bake second, without meeting his eyes. Park last, slowly. the way a man leaves a room he is planning to return to. When the door closed, Kim sat down on the low leather bench where Park had been sitting. The jade tray still held the ash of the cigarette. He looked at it for a long time. Then he took out his phone. He did not call Vanessa. He did not call Daniel. He did not call his lawyer. He opened a contact he had not opened in 9 years. The number was labeled only with a single Korean character. The character meant clean. The man on the other end answered on the third ring. Hyun-jae, the man said. It has been a long time. Songnim, Kim said. I need to meet you. Tonight. Not at the office. Not at your home. Somewhere neutral. You are calling me at 10 o'clock at night from your own compound. That tells me 2 things. You are in trouble, and you do not trust the compound. Both are correct. There is a Buddhist temple in Koreatown on 6th. It is open until midnight. There is a courtyard behind the main hall. No one goes there in winter. I will be there in an hour. He ended the call. He sat, in the cold room, and looked at the koi pond in the dark. He thought, very briefly, of the powder blue dress, of the way her hair had fallen when she turned, of the way she had said, without cruelty, go away. He thought of the boy at her hip, and the girl in the stroller, and the small unborn twins she did not yet know she was carrying, for the world to see. He thought of the mansion with its 12 empty bedrooms. He had built a cage, and the woman had walked out of it, and the cage, not knowing she was gone, was still trying to close its door. He stood, he put on his jacket, he straightened his tie. He walked out to the car alone. Song Byung-ho was a small man, 58, gray at the temples. He wore a dark wool coat over a plain sweater and slacks, no tie. In his other life, he had been the deputy chief of the Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency's Organized Crime Bureau. In this life, he was a private security consultant based in Torrance. In the life between those two, which almost no one knew about, he was the man the FBI's Asian Organized Crime Task Force in Los Angeles used as a bridge when they needed information that could not, for reasons of protocol, come directly from Seoul. He was standing in the temple courtyard with his hands folded behind his back. A stone lantern burned low. The air smelled of incense and rain that had not yet fallen. Oyabun, he said, without turning. I did not expect to see you in a temple. I did not expect to be in one. You have come to confess. I have come to give you something. Song turned. His face was calm, unreadable, the face of a man who had spent a career listening to men like Kim Hyun-jae say things they could not take back. Give me what? Everything. The word sat in the air. Song did not react. He waited. The Baeko Pa, Kim said, the Los Angeles operations, the books, the accounts, the names of the front foundations, the names of the auction houses, the routing, the couriers, the council members here and in Seoul, the 2 federal officials on our payroll, the judge in Orange County, the banker in Long Beach, everything. Song's eyes did not change, but his hands, behind his back, tightened. Why? He said. Because if I do not, they will kill a man on Thursday, and then they will spend 2 years arranging his widow to come home to me, and I would rather burn every stone of what my father built than be the reason she buries a husband. Song took a long breath. He looked up, at the temple eaves, at the dark shapes of the roof tiles against the sky. You understand, he said, that what you are offering will end you. Not only as Oyabun, as a man, you will lose the compound, the auction houses, the foundation, the bank accounts, foreign and domestic. You will lose the protection of every man who has ever bowed to you. You will most likely lose your freedom for a period of years, although I will do what I can. You will be, at the end of this, an ordinary man with an ordinary name in an ordinary apartment. Do you understand this? I understand it. You have not understood it until you have slept a night on it. I have slept 6 years on it, Kim said. I only did not know that was what I was sleeping on. Song nodded, once. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and took out a small, plain notebook. He turned to a blank page. Begin, he said. Names first, then numbers, then dates. Kim began. He spoke for an hour and 40 minutes. Song wrote. The stone lantern burned lower. At one point, a monk in a gray robe crossed the courtyard, saw them, bowed slightly, and did not stop. When Kim reached the section on the auction house in Beverly Hills, and the way certain lots of Joseon Dynasty ceramics had been used to move money out of Macau, Song's pen paused for the first time. He looked up. "You are aware," he said, "that this piece alone is worth 20 years. "I am aware." Song wrote it down. When they finished, it was almost 2 in the morning. The courtyard was cold. Kim's hands, on his knees, had gone numb. Song closed the notebook. He held it against his chest. "There is one more thing," Kim said. "There always is. The Hyun Global Foundation, the pediatric wing at St. Aloysius, the scholarships, the clinic in Koreatown. None of that is dirty. It was clean money placed on top of dirty money to disguise the smell, but the wing itself, the doctors, the equipment, the treatment, all of that is real. I do not want the FBI to touch it. I do not want it seized. I do not want a single child to lose a bed because of what I am telling you tonight." Song considered him. "That is not a small request." "I know. What do you propose?" "I propose to sign the foundation over, before you file, to an independent board. 3 trustees, a pediatric oncologist from UCLA, a retired federal judge, a representative from the Archdiocese, because St. Aloysius is Catholic and they will not touch a Catholic hospital in an election year. The transfer is public, notarized, irrevocable. By the time the indictments come, the foundation will no longer be mine to seize. And you will do this by Friday morning. That is very fast." "Thursday," Kim said, "is not a day I can allow to arrive with the current arrangement." Song almost smiled. He did not quite. He put the notebook into his coat. "I will make the call tonight," he said. "The task force will meet at 6. You will hear from a man named Reyes by 9 tomorrow morning. Do not run. Do not move money. Do not warn anyone in your organization. Do not speak to Park Chul-soo again, except to give normal orders. If he sees your face change, he will act before Thursday. Do you understand?" "I understand." "And Haeyeon J.C." Song paused, at the edge of the lantern's light. "The woman. She will never know it was you. If we do this correctly, she will read about the indictments in the Los Angeles Times, and she will think it was justice, and she will not think of you at all. That is the price. If you are doing this to be a hero in her story, do not do it." "I am not doing it to be in her story," Kim said. "I am doing it to be out of it." Song looked at him for a long moment. "Then go home," he said, "and do not sleep. Tomorrow will be a long day." Kim drove down the hill in the dark. He did not go home to the compound. He went to a small apartment in Koreatown that had been in his mother's name for 20 years and had, on the books, never belonged to him. The apartment had 2 rooms, a bed, a kettle, a rice cooker, a photograph of his mother as a young woman standing in front of a fish market in Busan. He made tea. He drank it standing at the window. Below, on 6th Street, a woman in a white apron was closing a sundubu restaurant. A man in a delivery uniform was carrying flowers into a refrigerated van. The city breathed the way cities breathe at 3 in the morning, which is not silence, but a slow, wide, patient exhale. He thought, for the first time in many hours, of the twins. Not Vanessa's, his own. The heirs he had wanted, the line he had been raised to continue, the reason he had told himself, that he had signed the paper 9 years ago. He thought of the boy at Vanessa's hip in the pediatric wing, the girl in the stroller, the way Daniel Foster's hand had cupped, in the surveillance photograph, the back of his daughter's head. He understood, standing at the window at 3 in the morning in a 2-room apartment that smelled of green tea and old paint, that the line he had been so afraid of ending had ended a long time ago. Not because Vanessa could not bear children, because he, Kim Hyun-jae, had not been the man who deserved to father them. The line had ended, quietly, in a divorce court in Los Angeles, 9 years earlier. He had just been too proud to notice. He set down the cup. He walked to the small desk by the window. He opened his laptop. He began to write, in Korean, the letter that would go, by courier, at 7 in the morning, to the 3 men he had chosen as trustees for the foundation. He wrote for 2 hours. He did not sleep. At 6:15, his phone rang. It was Reyes, from the task force. The voice was younger than he expected, and calmer. "Mr. Kim," Reyes said, "I understand we are going to have a conversation." "We are. Where would you like to have it?" "Wherever is convenient for you," I will not be running. There is an office in Westwood, a federal building. It does not look federal from the outside. I will send a car at 9. I will be dressed and waiting. Mr. Kim. A pause. You should understand. This is not a deal. There is no deal on offer. What you are giving us because you have decided to. We will use it. We will indict people. We will indict, likely, you. Nothing you say to me today changes that. I understand. You still want the car at 9? I still want the car at 9. All right, a beat. For what it is worth, Mr. Kim, in 22 years I have not had a call like the one Song made last night. For what it is worth, Agent Reyes, in 37 years I have not made a call like the one I made last night either. Reyes ended the call. Kim closed the laptop. He walked into the small bathroom. He washed his face with cold water. He stood in front of the mirror. The tattoo on the left side of his neck, the white tiger, seemed, in the fluorescent light, smaller than he remembered. He had gotten it at 19, in a room above a noodle shop in Itaewon, from an old man who had told him that the white tiger did not choose its master, only its shadow. He had not understood then. He understood now. The tiger had been his shadow for 18 years. Today it would stop. He put on a white shirt, a charcoal suit, a black tie, the same tie he had worn to Rodeo Drive. He straightened the knot in the mirror. He did not look, particularly, like a man about to be arrested. He looked like a man on his way to a meeting he had been avoiding his entire life. At 8:55, the car arrived. A black sedan, unmarked. The driver was a woman in a plain dark suit who nodded at him once and did not speak. Kim locked the apartment door. He walked down the stairs. He did not look back at the koi pond he did not, this morning, own. He did not look back at the compound. He did not look at his phone. On the drive to Westwood, he passed, without knowing it, the flower shop on Larchmont where a delivery of white peonies had been loaded into a refrigerated van the previous morning, and was, at that very moment, being unloaded at a small stone-walled garden in Pasadena, where a woman in a pale yellow linen dress was standing with one hand on the small, still nearly invisible swell of her stomach, talking to a landscaper about where to plant the new hedge. He did not know about the peonies. He did not know about the hedge. He did not know that she had, that morning, at breakfast, looked at Daniel Foster over the top of her coffee cup and said, quietly, "I think we should tell the children this weekend." He did not know that Daniel had reached across the table and taken her hand. He knew only that the car was moving west on the 10 and that in a federal building in Westwood, a man he had never met was waiting to end his life. He rested his head, briefly, against the cool glass of the window. The city passed. The palms passed. The billboards passed. Somewhere, in a receiving room in the hills, Park Chul-soo was drinking his morning tea and reviewing, for the last time, a Thursday that would never arrive. Kim closed his eyes. For the first time in 6 years, he did not feel like an oyabun. He felt like a man, a tired, 37-year-old man in a good suit in the back of a car that was taking him, finally, out of the story he had spent his adult life writing, and into the smaller, quieter, harder story he should have been living all along. The car took the exit for Westwood. The driver spoke, for the first time. 2 minutes, Mr. Kim. Thank you, he said. He opened his eyes. Outside the window, a young woman in scrubs was walking a small dog across an intersection. She was laughing at something on her phone. She did not see him. She did not know his name. She did not know that in a federal building 3 blocks away, the largest voluntary dismantling of a Korean organized crime faction in the history of the Los Angeles field office was about to begin, in a windowless room, over a cup of bad coffee, with a man in a charcoal suit and a black silk tie who had, at some point in the last 12 hours, quietly stopped being the man his father had raised him to be. The car pulled to the curb. Kim Hyun-jae stepped out into the morning. The federal building on Wilshire had a revolving door that turned too slowly for a man in a hurry, and Kim Hyun-jae was not in a hurry. He was in something colder than that. He crossed the lobby in his charcoal suit, the black silk tie knotted precise at the throat, the tattoo of the white tiger a quiet dark line at the side of his neck. He gave a name at the desk that was not his own. He was expected. The elevator climbed. He watched the floor numbers change without watching them. On the 14th floor, a woman in a gray blazer met him at the glass door. She did not shake his hand. She led him down a corridor of closed offices to a room with no window and one long table. Two men were already seated. One had a laptop, the other had a folder, neither stood. Kim placed a leather portfolio on the table. He did not sit. "Everything is here," he said. His English was quiet, exact. Ledger entries, bank routing, names of front officers, the auction house in Beverly Hills, the pediatric wing budget and the numbers underneath it. The man with the folder opened it. "You understand what you're giving us. I understand. And you understand what happens to you. I understand that too." The woman in gray watched him without expression. "Why?" Kim looked at the table. He thought of a powder blue dress moving away from him on a sidewalk. He thought of two children who had not flinched when he stepped from a car. He thought of a hand on the small of a back that was not his hand. "Because the empire has become the cage," he said, "and she is inside it whether she stands in it or not." The man with the laptop began to type. They kept him in that room for 6 hours. He answered every question. He named every man. He drew, on a sheet of yellow legal paper, the flow of money from the Baco Pa Street operations, through the fake donor cells, through the foundation accounts, through the acquisition of Korean Celadon vases at inflated auction prices, and out into the clean white light of philanthropy. He drew arrows. He wrote initials. He signed at the bottom. The woman in gray looked at the paper for a long time. "You'll go to prison," she said. "Perhaps. You know that isn't a perhaps." "Then I know." She slid a form across to him. He signed that too. When he left the federal building, the afternoon had turned brass. The palms along Wilshire moved without sound. He walked 3 blocks to a coffee shop he had never entered before, sat in the window, and drank black coffee that was too bitter. He watched a woman push a stroller past the glass. The child inside was maybe 2. He looked away. His phone rang. He did not answer. It rang again. He did not answer. The 3rd time he answered. It was not one of the men from the compound. It was Junho. Junho's voice was flat. "They know." "How?" "A cousin at the auction house. Someone saw you enter the building on Wilshire. They put it together in an hour." "Where are they now?" "The compound. All of them. They are waiting for you to come home." Kim looked at his coffee. "I am not coming home." There was a silence on the line. "Hyunjae." "Yes. They will move on the boyfriend. Tonight. The moment they understand they cannot recover what they've lost, they will burn the thing they think you want. To hurt you, to hurt her, to pull her back through grief." Kim closed his eyes. "Where is she now?" "Her apartment? He is with her. The children are with them. Address. You cannot go there. Address." Junho gave it. Kim ended the call. He left a 20 on the table for a $4 coffee. He walked out into the brass afternoon. He drove west. He drove fast, but not recklessly. He kept his hands at 10 and 2, and he kept his breath even, and he thought about the exact sequence of what he would do when he arrived. He would not knock on her door. He would not show his face to her. He would park across the street. He would sit in the car. He would watch the sidewalk and the lobby and the roofline for the men who would come, and when they came, he would put himself between them and the door. He did not think, as he drove, about whether he would survive that. He thought about the powder blue dress. The building she lived in now was a low, white 4-story in Larchmont, jacaranda in bloom along the curb, purple petals crushed on the sidewalk by strollers and dogs. Kim parked half a block down under a plane tree. He turned the engine off. He rolled the window down 2 fingers. He waited. At 6 o'clock, a man came out of the lobby holding a paper bag of groceries. Daniel Foster. Kim watched him. Daniel walked to a car parked on the same side of the street, opened the trunk, put the groceries inside. He was in a white linen shirt with the sleeves folded to the forearm. His posture was easy. He did not look over his shoulder. He did not check windows. A man who had never been hunted and did not know he was going to be. Wanted for one strange and shameful moment to be angry at him for that. For the ease of it. For the luck of it. For the fact that this man got to walk out of a lobby with groceries and take them upstairs to a woman who had waited 3 years to eat dinner without her stomach turning. The moment passed. Daniel closed the trunk and went back inside. At 7, the sky went pink at the edges. Kim watched a black SUV turn onto the street at the far end and slow. He knew the shape of it. He knew the shape of the men inside it. 2 in the front, 2 in the back. The one in the passenger seat was Baek Sung Min. a lieutenant who had come up through the docks in Busan and who did not do anything with his hands that he had not been asked to do. Kim opened his glove box. He took out what was inside. He closed it. He got out of the car. He walked down the middle of the sidewalk toward the SUV as it eased along the curb. He did not run. He did not raise his voice. He held one hand slightly out from his side so they would see it. The SUV rolled to a stop 10 feet from him. The passenger window came down. Baek Sung-min looked at him from behind sunglasses. Oyabun, I am not that anymore. You are until we say you are not. Kim stopped walking. You will turn this car around. We were told to make an example. Of whom? Of the man upstairs. Whose order? You know whose. Kim looked past him into the back seat. Two young faces, boys almost. He remembered picking one of them up from an airport 4 years ago, a nephew of a nephew, sent from Incheon because there was nothing at home for him. Listen to me, Kim said. He said it in Korean. The house is empty. The accounts are frozen by tonight. The men who paid your salary this month cannot pay it next month. The name, Baeko Pa, will be on a federal indictment before the end of the week. What you do here does not save anything. It buries you next to me. Baek did not move. Go home, Kim said. Not the compound. Home. To your mother. Get on a plane. And her? Baek said. He tilted his head toward the white building. She is not part of this. She was never part of this. She was the one clean thing, and we poisoned her without touching her, and if any of you steps out of this car onto that sidewalk, I will make sure the last thing you see in this life is my face. He said the last part very quietly. The backseat boys looked at each other. Baek held his gaze for a long count. Then he pushed his sunglasses up onto his forehead. His eyes were tired. He was, Kim realized, only 32 years old. You gave it all away, Baek said. Yes. Everything. Yes. For a woman who does not want you. For a woman I owe. Baek looked at him a moment more. Then he tapped the driver twice on the shoulder. The SUV rolled forward past Kim, slow, and at the corner it turned and it was gone. Kim stood in the middle of the sidewalk. He did not move for a long time. He looked up at the 4th-floor window of the white building. A light was on. He could not see her. He could see the shape of a room, a ceiling, the shadow of something moving that might have been a child running through. He walked back to his car. He got in, he drove east. He did not go to the compound. He drove to a small residential street in Koreatown, on the 2nd floor of a stucco building above a dry cleaner, and he unlocked a door to a one-room apartment he had rented 3 weeks ago under his mother's maiden name, a mattress on the floor, a folding chair, a single window that looked out onto a parking lot, and a jacaranda tree that had already dropped its blooms. He sat on the folding chair. He did not turn the light on. His phone rang all night. He did not answer. At 3 in the morning, the sound stopped for the first time. He looked out the window. He had thought he was tired. He was not tired. He was something else. He was empty in a way that felt, for the first time in his adult life, like it was not going to be filled by anything he did next. He slept sitting up in the folding chair. In the morning, the arrests began. He watched them on a small television he had bought at a bodega. Federal agents at the compound. Federal agents at the auction house. Federal agents at 3 restaurants, 2 office suites, 1 Buddhist temple that had been laundering donations for 11 years. The anchor said the words, White Tiger and Organized Crime, and Philanthropic Front, and Kim Hyun-jae. His photograph appeared on the screen, taken 3 years ago at a museum gala. He had not smiled in the photograph. He watched himself not smile, and he thought about how a face could belong to a man who no longer existed. He turned the television off. He walked to a payphone 6 blocks away. He called a lawyer he trusted. He said, when the lawyer answered, I will come in this afternoon. Have the terms ready. I am not fighting anything. The lawyer said, you could disappear. Kim said, I have already disappeared. He went in at 3. The federal agents were courteous. The handcuffs were not tight. On the ride downtown, he watched the palms and the billboards and a woman on a bus stop bench eating a peach with both hands, and he thought this was a beautiful city, and he had never once been inside it. He was processed. He was arraigned. Because he had come in voluntarily, because his cooperation had already produced 8 indictments and would produce 20 more, because his lawyer was very good, He was released on a bond that took most of what remained of a personal account his lieutenants had not known to freeze. He walked out of the federal courthouse at 9 o'clock at night into a light rain. There were no reporters. There would be, in a week. Tonight, there was only rain. He walked 7 blocks to a bus. He rode the bus to Koreatown. He climbed the stairs to the apartment above the dry cleaner. He sat on the folding chair. He waited to feel something. He did not. The next morning, he did the thing he had been planning to do for 2 weeks. He signed the papers that transferred the Bel Air estate, the one with the koi pond and the empty nursery, into an irrevocable trust in the name of the Hyun Global Foundation's pediatric wing, restricted to bone marrow transplant care for uninsured children, with 2 co-trustees who would be a black pediatric oncologist he had never met, and a retired federal judge who had once ruled against him in a civil matter, and whom he trusted for exactly that reason. He signed the papers that named the 2 beneficiaries of the trust's educational annex. He wrote the names carefully. Ethan Foster, Evelyn Foster. He wrote them the way a man writes names he will never say aloud. He did not put his name on any document as the source of the gift. He wrote a single note. He wrote it by hand, in English, on plain white paper. The house is not mine anymore. It never should have been. It is theirs now, in your children's names, for the wing that keeps other people's children alive. There is nothing to answer. There is nothing to return. Do what you will with this letter. He signed the note with a single letter, H. He put the note and the recorded transfer document into a plain manila envelope. He addressed it in block capitals to Vanessa Montgomery at the Larchmont address. He walked it to a mailbox on the corner. He dropped it in. He listened to it fall. He walked back to the apartment above the dry cleaner. He sat on the folding chair. He looked at the jacaranda tree through the window. It was in its second bloom of the season. The blossoms were the color of the powder blue dress, but only if you were the kind of man who had spent 3 years teaching himself to see that color in every purple thing in the world. He was that kind of man. He sat there for a long time. Months passed the way months do when a man has nothing to schedule. Kim Hyun-jae woke early. He drank tea, not coffee. He walked in the mornings to a market on 6th Street and bought vegetables and rice and once a week a small piece of fish. He cooked on a single hot plate. He ate at the folding chair. He read books in Korean that his mother had loved, borrowed from a small library on Vermont Avenue. He did not answer his phone. He did not own a phone anymore. He owned a landline that rang twice a week, always his lawyer, and he answered it and said yes or no and hung up. Twice a month he went downtown to meet with prosecutors. He gave them what they asked for. He named more men. He drew more arrows. The indictments grew. The Baeko Pa, which had existed in one form or another since 1961, dissolved into a court docket. He did not feel proud of this. He did not feel ashamed. He felt the way a man feels who has finally stopped lying about the weather. He did not walk on Rodeo Drive. He did not drive past Larchmont. He did not look at photographs of pregnant women in windows of maternity shops. He did, once, at a corner near the market, see a woman from behind who had long dark hair falling straight to the middle of her back and a coat the color of butter, and his chest did the thing it did, and he stopped walking, and he waited until she turned her face in profile and it was not her, and then he crossed the street and continued to the market and bought scallions. That was on a Tuesday in April. By June, the city was hot. By June, in a garden a mile and a world away from him, another life was unfolding as if his own had never happened. The garden was behind a small craftsman house on a side street off Larchmont, rented for the summer, while a permanent home was being finished in Silver Lake. Old lemon tree, bougainvillea on the fence, a round wooden table under a canvas umbrella, 2 small brown children on the grass, one in a butter-yellow dress with lavender cardigan, one in blue overalls, running after a soccer ball that was too big for either of them, and that they insisted on kicking together, as a team, the way twins do things. Vanessa Montgomery sat at the table in a loose linen shift the color of cream, 6 months pregnant. Her hand rested on the curve of her belly with the absent-minded gentleness of a woman who no longer had to remember to be gentle with it. Her hair fell straight and glossy over one shoulder. She was watching the children. She was smiling at nothing in particular. She was warm inside her own skin. Daniel Foster came out of the back door with a tray. Iced hibiscus tea in a glass pitcher. 4 glasses, 2 small, 2 large. A plate of orange slices. He set it down. He kissed the top of her head as he passed. He sat. "They're going to fall over," he said, watching Evelyn spin in place. "They fall over about 80 times a day," Vanessa said. "It hasn't slowed them down yet." Speaking from experience. Speaking from experience. He poured tea. He handed her a glass. She took it. Their fingers touched. It was, she noticed, a Tuesday afternoon, and nothing hurt. That was the thing that had come slowest, the absence of hurt. For the first year of the new life, she had kept waiting for it to arrive. She had woken at 4 in the morning, bracing for a cold voice in the next room, for the silence that had lived in her marriage the way mold lives in a wall. It had taken her body a long time to learn that the silence in this house was a different silence. This one had breathing in it. This one had children in the next room. This one did not need to be survived. She sipped the tea. She watched Evelyn tackle Ethan into the grass. Ethan laughed. Daniel said, "Your mother called. She wants to come out in July. She can come out in July. She wants to bring a crib." "Tell her we have a crib." "I did. She's bringing a crib anyway. Then we will have 2 cribs." He laughed. She laughed. The baby moved inside her, a slow shift like a fish turning in a pond, and she put her palm flat where the movement was, and waited for it to move again. The mail came at 3. It always came at 3. Daniel went out to the front of the house and came back with a small stack. Bills, a magazine, a large manila envelope with no return address, addressed in careful block capitals to Vanessa Montgomery. He set the envelope on the table without comment. He knew, without needing to be told, not to open envelopes addressed to her alone. She picked it up. She looked at the handwriting. She did not recognize it. Or she did, in the way one recognizes weather. She opened it slowly. Inside were 2 things: a legal document, thick, with a gold notary seal, and pages of signatures and language about irrevocable trusts and pediatric bone marrow programs, and the Bel Air estate, at an address she had once fallen asleep in every night, and a single sheet of white paper with a handwritten note on it. She read the note. She read it again. She looked at the signature. 1 letter, H. The children shrieked in the grass. Ethan had the ball. Evelyn was chasing. The lemon tree moved in a breeze. Somewhere on the block a dog barked once and stopped. Daniel was watching her. He did not ask. She stood. She walked to the small barbecue at the corner of the patio, still warm from Sunday, ash gray and cool at the edges. She lifted the grate. She held the note over the coals. She struck the long match Daniel used for the grill. She lit the corner of the paper. She watched the flame take the H first. She watched the words darken and curl. She watched the paper become smoke and then become nothing. The ash fell soft into the barbecue. She let the last corner burn from her fingers and dropped it in. She closed the grate. She turned back toward the table. She sat down. She picked up the legal document. She did not burn that one. She folded it carefully in half. She would send it to a lawyer in the morning. She would let the trust stand. Children she would never meet would receive care they could not have afforded. That was the shape of what she would keep, not the man. The good the man had, at the end, been forced to admit was better done without him. Daniel poured her more tea. "Are you all right?" he said. "Yes." "Was it what I think it was?" "Yes." He did not ask more. He did not need to. He put his hand over hers on the table. He left it there. Across the city, on the 2nd floor above a dry cleaner in Koreatown, in a room with a mattress on the floor and a folding chair by a single window, Kim Hyun-jae sat with the window open. He could not have known she had received it. He could not have known she had burned it. He could not have known she had kept the trust and let it live. He knew none of these things. He knew only that it was the hour of the day when the light in Los Angeles turned the color of honey and moved across the wall of any room that had a west-facing window. His window faced west. The light was moving across the wall now. It touched the folding chair. It touched his hands, which rested loose in his lap. It touched, at the side of his neck, the dark line of a tattoo he had not thought about in weeks. Below, in the parking lot, the jacaranda tree had finished its 2nd bloom. The last of the petals had fallen. The sidewalk under it was scattered with pale purple that would be swept away by the shopkeeper in the morning. He watched the light move. He did not weep. He had done that already, on the folding chair, on a Tuesday in April, when a woman in a butter-colored coat had turned her face and not been her. He had done it once, cleanly, and he had not done it again. He thought, without pain now, about a garden he had never seen. He did not know it existed. He constructed it anyway, the way a man might construct a chapel in his mind, and then live quietly under its roof for the rest of his life. He put a lemon tree in it. He put bougainvillea. He put a table under an umbrella. He put a woman in a loose linen shift, the color of cream, with a hand at the curve of her belly. He put 2 children in the grass. He did not put himself in the garden. He knew better. He set the garden down at the edge of his mind. He left it there. The light moved off his hands. The room went slowly gray. He got up. He filled a small pot with water. He set it on the hot plate. He measured rice. He waited for the water to boil. He was 37 years old. He had been the head of the Beko Pa. He had loved one woman in his life. He had loved her badly, and he had loved her without knowing that what he was doing was killing her by inches. And when he had finally understood, he had done the only clean thing he had ever done, which was to take the roof off her cage so that she could fly out of it and never once look back. She had not looked back. That was the answer to the prayer he had not known he was praying. The water boiled. He added the rice. He turned the heat down. He sat in the folding chair and he watched the steam rise from the pot in a slow, soft column that curled and dispersed and was gone. Outside, the city hummed. Somewhere a child was being carried inside for a bath. Somewhere a man was setting a table for a woman he loved. Somewhere a life was continuing that had nothing to do with him and that he had, finally, at very great cost, made possible. He closed his eyes. He listened to the rice cook. He was, for the first time in a very long time, exactly where he belonged. The rice cooker clicked off in the dark. Kim Hyun-jae opened his eyes. For a long moment he did not move. The small kitchen of the Koreatown apartment held the smell of jasmine steam and something older, something he had not smelled in 20 years. The smell of a home that belonged to a working man. He rose. He lifted the lid. He spooned white rice into a plain ceramic bowl. He carried the bowl to the low table by the window, and he sat on the floor, and he ate. Outside, Koreatown breathed. Neon in Hangul across the street. A bakery closing its shutter. 2 old men over a chessboard on the sidewalk. The city he had grown up in. The city he had spent 15 years pretending to own from the hills above. He ate slowly. He had eaten in the finest restaurants of Seoul and Beverly Hills, and none had ever asked anything of him. This bowl asked him to be small. He was, for the moment, willing to be small. The phone on the counter buzzed. He set his chopsticks down. The screen was a burner. The number was not saved. He knew it anyway. He answered on the 4th ring. Oyabun. The voice was Park Jin-woo, second in the Beko Pa, a man he had raised, in his way, from a 19-year-old runner with a broken tooth to the operations lieutenant of a $50 million laundry pipeline. Park Jin-woo did not say his name. He never did. He always said the title. I am not Oyabun anymore, Kim said. You are Oyabun until the council says otherwise. The council will say otherwise, tomorrow. There was a pause on the line. Traffic on the other end. A car door. Hyung, Park said. Older brother. A softer word. We need to talk, not on the phone. Then don't call. You need to hear this from me, not from someone else. Kim looked at the bowl of rice. He looked at the window. He looked at the reflection of a thin man in a white undershirt and gray slacks and no tie, sitting on a floor cushion, alone. Where? He said. The parking structure. 6th and Alexandria, roof level, 20 minutes. The line went dead. He stood. He rinsed the bowl. He dried the bowl. He set the bowl on the small wooden rack he had bought at the market for $4. He walked to the closet. He put on a jacket. He did not put on the tie. On the ground floor, he passed the mailboxes and the flickering fluorescent. The night was cool. He walked. 6 blocks north, 2 east, past the karaoke bar and the tofu house. He had run these blocks as a teenager with a paper sack in his hand. He had come back at 25 in a black car with a driver who called him boss. Now he walked. His shoes made no particular sound. The parking structure was 7 stories of gray concrete. The elevator was broken. He took the stairs. He climbed slowly, not because he was tired, but because he wanted to arrive already breathing evenly. On the 7th landing, he pushed open the metal door and stepped onto the roof. 2 black SUVs, headlights off, engines running low. Park Jin-woo stood between them in a dark coat. Behind him, 4 men in dark jackets. Kim knew each of them by name. He had eaten at each of their weddings. He had signed the paper that put one of their sons through college in Busan. He walked to the middle of the roof and stopped. Park stepped forward alone. Young. Park's face was tight. You went to the federal building. Kim did not answer. We know you went. We know what building. We know the floor. Then you know why. I want to hear you say it. Kim looked past him at the skyline. The Wilshire Towers glittered west. The Hollywood Hills sat quiet to the north. He had owned pieces of both. He was giving all of it away. I gave them the ledger, he said. Park closed his eyes for one long second. Young, I gave them the auction house, the routing numbers, the names. You gave them our names, not yours. You gave them enough that they'll find mine. They will find only what you allow them to find. You have 48 hours before the first indictments. Take your wife, take your son, take the account in Panama, leave, do not come back. Park stared at him. For a moment, Kim saw the boy again, the 19-year-old with the broken tooth. The boy who had cried once, quietly, in the back of a warehouse in Gardena, after his first job went wrong. Kim had put a hand on his shoulder that night and said nothing, and the boy had understood the nothing. Tonight there was no nothing to say. Why? Park said. You know why? Say it. For her. Park laughed. It was not a laugh. It was the sound a man makes when a door closes on his fingers. For her. He shook his head. Hyung. She is gone. She has been gone for 2 years. She has a new man, 2 children, another one on the way. She does not need you to burn our house down. She does not need me to do anything, Kim said. She never did. That was always the problem. Then why? Kim was quiet. Because I built a cage, he said finally. I did not know it was a cage while I was building it. I thought I was building a palace. But every wall was a bar. Every guard was a lock. But every dinner she attended was a performance. Every doctor she saw was a report that came to my desk. Every friend she made was vetted. Every conversation she had was known. She was inside my hands the way a bird is inside a fist. And I asked myself why the bird did not sing. Park did not speak. She could not have a child in that house, Kim said, because that house was not a house. It was a machine for making her afraid. Her body knew. Her body would not build a life inside a fear that large. I read every report the doctors wrote. There was nothing wrong with her. There was something wrong with the air she breathed. I was the air. He looked at Park. I divorced her because I told myself I was setting her free. I told myself the story 100 times, and it was almost true, but it was not the whole truth. The whole truth is that I let her walk out of the cage, and I kept the cage, I kept the money, I kept the men, I kept the name. And the moment she found a life on the other side of my walls, the cage reached out for her again. The cage did not reach for her, Hyung. Yes, it did. No, the cage did nothing. The cage was doing what a cage does, which is nothing. She was fine. He was fine. The children were fine. We did nothing. You were about to. Park's face did not move. Do not lie to me, Jinwoo. Not tonight. The silence on the roof was the kind that has a weight. Who ordered it? Kim said. No one ordered anything. Who proposed it? Park looked at the ground. Chairman Beck. Beck. He said. Park lifted his eyes. He said the Oyabun has been distracted for 2 years. He said the Oyabun needs to be brought back. He said if we remove the new husband, the woman would come to us for protection out of grief, and the Oyabun would come back to us to protect her, and the family would be whole again. He said it like a business proposal. Hyung. In the sitting room, over tea, like he was talking about a warehouse lease. Kim's face did not change. Nothing in him changed on the outside. Inside, something very small and very old took its last breath and died quietly. And you, he said. I said no. You said no. I said no in the room. I said no again after the meeting. I came here tonight because I said no a 3rd time on the phone this afternoon, and Beck did not take my 3rd no as an answer. When? Tomorrow. A car. On the way to the school in Beverly Hills. The twins have that pre-K program on Wednesdays. They know the pickup route. 2 blocks from the school. A staged accident. Only the husband dies. The children are unharmed. The wife is told it was random. Bake says grief will do the rest. The wind moved across the roof. Somewhere below, a bus hissed to a stop. Kim did not move. He did not speak. He stood exactly as he had been standing, thin and straight in his jacket without a tie, and he looked at Park Jin-woo, and Park Jin-woo could not hold his eyes. "How many men?" Kim said. "3 in the strike car, 2 in the trail vehicle, 1 in the cleanup van." "Names?" Park gave the names. 6 names. Kim had heard each of them for years. He had lent one of them money to bury a father. He had approved the wedding of another. He had been godfather at the christening of the daughter of a third, Catholic, in a small church in Cerritos. He had held the baby. "Cancel it," Kim said. "I cannot cancel a chairman's order." "Cancel it, Jin-woo." "Hyung, cancel it. Tell them the Oyabun forbids it. Tell them the last order I gave before I left the seat was to protect that family. Tell them the white tiger does not eat children. The seat is not yours anymore. You gave it up when you walked into that federal building. The seat was never mine. The seat is a chair. Chairs do not have owners. Chairs have men who sit in them for a season. My season is done, but my word is still my word, and my word tonight is that no man who ever called me Hyung raises a hand against that man in that car in the morning. Not one. Do you hear me? I hear you. Do you understand me?" Park was quiet. "I understand what you are asking. I do not know if I can deliver it. Then bring me to Beck. Hyung. Bring me to Baekek, tonight, now. He will not see you. He will see me. Hyung, he will not see you because he knows what you did today. He knows about the federal building. He knew before you finished the meeting. He has already put a price on your head. There is a car outside your apartment right now. There is another one at the intersection of Vermont and 6th. If you go anywhere near the estate in Bel Air tonight, they will kill you before you reach the gate. I brought you here so you would know. I brought you here so you could get in one of these cars and go. Go where? Anywhere. Panama, Vancouver, Manila. I have papers. I have cash. I have a driver. You have 2 hours." Kim looked at the 4 men behind Park. They stood very still. Each of them had a hand near a coat pocket. Each of them was waiting for a signal that had not yet come. "You would let me go," Kim said. "Yes. Even after what I gave the Americans." "Yes." "Why?" Park took a breath. "Because you carried me out of a warehouse in Gardena when I was 19 years old, and I had made a mistake that should have killed me, and you did not let it kill me, and you did not charge me for the ride. I owe you 1 ride, Hyung. Tonight I am giving it back." Kim looked at him for a long time. "Thank you," he said. "Get in the car." "No." "Hyung." "No, Jin-woo. Not the car. Not Panama, not Manila. I am not running. I am staying in this city until every one of those 6 names is off that route tomorrow morning. And after that, I am staying in this city because this city is where she is, and if I run, she is not safe. If I disappear, Bake keeps his idea. If I am dead, Bake keeps his idea. The only way that man in the linen shirt gets in his car tomorrow and drives his children to school is if the white tiger is disassembled in daylight, publicly, completely, and every man inside it knows the reason. Bake does not get to keep his idea. Not tomorrow, not next month, not ever. You cannot disassemble the white tiger tonight. I already did. I did it on the 14th floor of the federal building this afternoon. What I need from you tonight is 48 hours between now and the moment the first agent knocks on the first door. In those 48 hours, you will cancel the order on the linen shirt. You will move your own family out of Los Angeles. You will take the account in Panama and go. And you will tell every man on this roof that the last order the Oyabun gave was that no one in this brotherhood will touch that family. Not the man, not the woman, not the twins, not the child she is carrying, not the school, not the hospital where she works, not the block she lives on. Nothing, ever. Do you hear me, Jin-woo? Nothing, ever." Park was silent for a long time. "I hear you." "Say it back." "Nothing. Ever." Louder, so the men hear it. Park turned. He looked at the 4 men behind him. He looked at each of them in turn. He raised his voice. Not much. just enough that it carried across the concrete roof and did not come back. The Oyabun's last standing order. The family of Vanessa Montgomery is untouchable. The husband, the children, the unborn, the house, the workplace, the route, untouchable. Any man who raises a hand answers to me personally. Any man who takes a rupee to raise that hand from someone outside this brotherhood answers to me personally. This order does not expire when the brotherhood ends. This order outlives the brotherhood. Do you hear? The four men said yes. Do you hear? They said yes again. Kim closed his eyes for one breath. Now go, he said. All of you, go tonight. Do not go home first. Do not pack. Go to the safe house in Alhambra. Take the envelopes. Take the passports. Split. 2 of you north. 2 of you south. Jinwoo and his family east. I will handle Baek. You cannot handle Baek alone, Hyungung. I am not handling him with hands. I am handling him with paper. There is one more folder I did not give the Americans this afternoon. It is Baek's folder. Everything he has ever owned. Everything he has ever hidden. Everything he has ever ordered. I kept it in reserve because I did not know, until tonight, if I would need it. Now I know. Tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. it will arrive by courier at the same office on Wilshire. By 9 a.m., Baek will not have the ability to order a cup of coffee, let alone a strike car. By noon, he will be in the same building I was in this afternoon, in a room without a window, answering questions about the last 20 years. Park stared at him. You kept a folder on the chairman. I kept a folder on everyone, including myself, especially myself. A man who does not keep a folder on himself has not been paying attention. You are going to be killed tonight, Hyung, before that folder is delivered. Then the folder is set to be delivered whether I am alive at 7 a.m. or not. My lawyer has instructions. My lawyer is not Korean. My lawyer is a woman in Century City who has never met any of you and does not know your names. She has one job. She holds an envelope. If I am alive at 6:30 a.m., I call her and the envelope stays in her safe. If I do not call, the envelope moves. Baek cannot kill the envelope. He can only kill me. And killing me only makes the envelope move faster. Park exhaled. It was a long, slow breath. You planned this. I planned all of it. The day she walked out of the courtroom 2 years ago. I did not know then that I would ever have the courage to use the plan. But I built the plan, and tonight I am using the plan. Why tonight? Kim looked at him. Because tonight is the night the white tiger came for a man in a linen shirt. Every night before tonight, I could still tell myself the cage was empty, that she had left it and the walls were just walls. Tonight the walls reached out. Tonight the cage stopped being a metaphor. Tonight my empire, which I told myself I kept for prestige, or for legacy, or for the family that no longer existed, tried to eat her husband on the way to a pre-K program. My empire is her prison, Jinwoo. It has been her prison from the first day. I refused to see it because seeing it meant tearing it down. Tonight I see it. Tonight I tear it down. Park did not speak. Kim continued, quieter. She is 31 years old. She has a man who puts his hand on the small of her back the way a man does when he means it. She has 2 children who look at her the way children look at a mother who came home every night. She has another child inside her body, which finally trusted a room enough to grow. That is not my life. It was never going to be my life, but it is her life, and it is theirs, and I built the machine that almost took it from her tomorrow morning at 8:15 on the corner of Roxbury and Sunset. That is the truth of it. And a man who knows that truth and does not act on it is not a man. He is a monument. I am done being a monument. The wind moved again. The 2 SUVs idled. Somewhere below, a woman laughed on the sidewalk, sharp and bright. Park nodded once. He walked back to the SUVs. He gave 3 quiet orders in Korean. Doors opened. Men got in. Engines shifted. Both cars rolled toward the ramp. At the last moment, Park turned in the driver's seat and looked back at Kim standing alone on the roof. Hyung, he called. Kim looked up. Live until 7, Park said. Please. Kim raised one hand. A small motion, half a wave, half a blessing. The kind of thing an older brother gives a younger one at a train station. The SUV disappeared down the ramp. He was alone on the concrete roof. For a long time he did not move. The wind pushed at the hem of his jacket. Somewhere above him, a helicopter tracked west toward the ocean. He looked once at the Bel Air Hills, dark and dotted with the yellow windows of houses he had once entered without knocking. He looked once at Beverly Hills, where a woman in a powder blue midi dress was, at this moment, probably reading a picture book to two children in a room lit by a single lamp. He looked once at his own reflection in the black glass of the stairwell door. He did not recognize the man in the glass. He also did not mind. He walked back down the stairs. 7 flights. He did not hurry. On the ground floor, he stepped out onto the sidewalk and turned left, toward home, and then he stopped. At the corner of 6th and Alexandria, half a block away, a black sedan sat with its lights off and its engine running. 2 silhouettes in the front seat. Neither of them looked at him. Both of them were looking at him. He knew the car. He knew the plates. He walked past it. He did not walk quickly. He did not walk slowly. He walked at the pace of a man who has finished a bowl of rice and is going home to sleep. He crossed the intersection. He did not look back. He heard the sedan's engine shift into drive. He heard the tires begin to roll. He heard the sedan pull out into the lane behind him and match his pace, 20 feet back, patient as a cat. He turned down a side street. The sedan turned with him. He turned again. The sedan turned again. At the mouth of a narrow alley between a laundromat and a shuttered dry cleaner, he stopped. He turned to face the sedan. He put his hands in his coat pockets, not for warmth and not for anything else. He stood in the yellow wash of a single street lamp and he waited. The sedan stopped 10 feet from him. The driver's window lowered. A face he knew looked out. A man named O. A man who had worked security at the Bel Air estate for 6 years. A man who had opened the gate for Vanessa's town car more times than either of them had ever counted. A man who was now holding a small dark object in his lap that Kim did not need to see clearly to identify. Hyung Nim, O said. Older brother, the words soft, almost apologetic. The chairman sends his regards. I know. He asks that you come with us. I will not come. He said you would say that. He was correct. O looked at him for a long moment. The dark object in his lap did not move. Hyung Nim. Yes. I have a son. He is 8. He plays baseball on Saturdays in Cerritos. 6 years ago you paid for his surgery when the insurance would not. I remember. He is alive because of that surgery. He is alive because of the surgeon. I only paid the bill. You paid the bill. Silence. Get in the car, Hyung Nim. No. Then run. I will not run either. Then I have to do what the chairman asked me to do. I know. O looked away. He looked out through the windshield at the empty street. He was not, Kim understood, a man who wanted to be holding what he was holding. He was a man who had a wife and a boy who played baseball, and a chairman whose word was law. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then O, very quietly, in Korean, said, Turn around, Hyung Nim. Please, do not make me look at you. Kim did not turn around. Oh yeah, he said. Little brother, look at me, look. I want you to remember something. When you go home tonight, whether you have done it or you have not done it, I want you to look at your son when he is sleeping. I want you to look at his face. I want you to see the face of a boy whose father was a man, not the face of a boy whose father was a man who did what he was told when he did not want to do it. Do you understand what I am saying to you? O's eyes filled. He blinked. Hyung Nim. There is a folder, Kim said, that will arrive at a federal office at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. In it is every crime the chairman has ever ordered, including the crime he is asking you to commit tonight. If you commit it, the folder still arrives. The chairman still falls. The only difference is that a man named O, with a son who plays baseball on Saturdays, will spend the next 25 years in a federal cell in Lompoc, and his son will grow up visiting him through glass. That is the only difference. The chairman falls either way. Vanessa lives either way. Her husband lives either way. Only your son changes. Only your son. O's hand on the steering wheel had begun to shake. Go home, Oya. Go home to the boy. Tell the chairman you could not find me. Tell him I got in a car and drove east. Tell him whatever you need to tell him. He will not be chairman by breakfast. By lunch, he will not be anything at all. Go home. The dark object in O's lap did not lift. It did not move. It sat there for what seemed a very long time. Then O's hand released it, and it settled deeper into the folds of his coat. He did not look at Kim again. The window rose. The sedan reversed slowly out of the alley mouth. It turned. It drove away. Its taillights turned the corner and were gone. Kim stood in the yellow wash of the street lamp. His hands were still in his coat pockets. Only now, in the silence after the sedan, did he realize that both his hands were trembling, not visibly, just enough that he could feel it against the lining of the pockets. He did not take them out. He waited for the trembling to stop. It took longer than he would have expected. When it stopped, he walked home. He climbed the 4 flights to the small apartment. He unlocked the door. He locked it behind him. He removed his shoes and set them on the rack. He walked to the kitchen. He looked at the small ceramic bowl he had dried an hour and a half ago. He looked at the window. He looked at his own reflection ghosted against the glass. Thin man, no tie, no house, no name. He sat down on the floor cushion. He did not turn on the light. Somewhere across the city, in a house he had never seen, a woman he had once been married to was reading a picture book to 2 children with names he did not know, while a man in a linen shirt washed the dinner dishes at a kitchen sink, and a small third life turned in her body without any idea of the dark he had just walked through to keep it turning. He sat in the dark and he counted the hours until 7. 7 o'clock arrived the way it always did in that house, without ceremony, without light. The clock in the hall struck once and then went silent, and Kim Hyun-jae stood up from the leather chair in the study and walked to the window and drew the heavy curtain back with 2 fingers. The sky over Beverly Hills was still black at its edges, but a thin gray line had begun to lift above the ridge. He watched it for a long time. He did not drink. He did not eat. He had not slept. On the desk behind him lay 3 objects arranged in a precise row: a black leather portfolio containing every account number, every shell corporation, every routing chain the Bacopa had built over 2 decades of quiet work, a single silver flash drive, unlabeled, that held the encrypted ledgers copied from the vault behind the false wall in the wine cellar, and a folded sheet of thick cream paper on which he had written, in his own small, precise hand, the name of a federal prosecutor in the Central District of California and a Los Angeles phone number that connected to no one he had ever met. He turned from the window. He walked to the desk. He touched the portfolio once, the way a man touches the shoulder of a child who is sleeping, and then he picked up his phone and dialed a number that he had memorized years ago and never called. The line rang twice. A man answered in Korean. "Speak," the man said. "It is Hyun-jae," Kim said. His voice was quiet and level. "I need to see the elder." There was a silence on the other end. Then the man said, "When?" "Today, this morning, before the sun is high." Another silence. Then, "He is at the house in Malibu." "I will be there in an hour," Kim said, and he ended the call and set the phone face down on the desk beside the portfolio and stood very still in the dark study while the gray line above the ridge widened into a pale bruise of dawn. He dressed with the same care he had always dressed. A charcoal suit cut to the millimeter, a white shirt pressed to a soft crease at the collar, a black silk tie knotted in a tight half-Windsor, Italian shoes polished until the leather showed the light back at him. He fastened the small silver watch to his left wrist and buttoned the single button of his jacket and looked at himself in the tall mirror by the door. The tiger on the left side of his neck showed a thin black line above the collar where the tail lifted toward his ear. He did not cover it. He did not touch it. He picked up the portfolio and the flash drive and the folded sheet of paper, and he walked down the long hall past rooms he had not entered in months, and out through the front doors and into the pale morning. The driver was waiting. The driver saw the portfolio and understood that something had shifted, and he did not ask. He opened the rear door. Kim got in. The car pulled through the iron gate and turned north along the empty road, and the ocean showed itself on the left as a flat gray plate that did not yet know it was the ocean. He rode in silence. The words were already inside him. He watched the coast unspool through the tinted window. He thought of Vanessa on the tiled terrace in the powder blue dress. He thought of the small third life turning inside her body without any knowledge of him. The house in Malibu sat on a bluff behind a wall of white stone. Bougainvillea spilled over the wall in dark magenta cascades. The driver stopped at the gate and spoke a name into a discreet brass panel, and the gate swung inward without sound. 2 men in dark suits met the car at the door. They bowed the shallow bow owed to an oyabun, and they did not search him. He walked between them across a marble floor and out through glass doors onto a terrace that opened to the Pacific. The elder was sitting at a low teak table under a linen awning. His name was Park Do-yun, and he was 78 years old, and he had been the quiet spine of the White Tiger in the western states for 31 years. He wore a pale gray sweater and loose black trousers, and his white hair was cut close to his skull. He was drinking green tea from a small, unglazed cup, and he did not rise when Kim stepped onto the terrace. He gestured, once, to the cushion across from him. Kim knelt on the cushion. He placed the portfolio flat on the teak between them. He placed the flash drive on top of the portfolio. He set the folded sheet of paper to the right of both. Then he pressed his palms to his thighs and inclined his head and waited. Park Do-yun studied the objects. He did not touch them. He lifted his cup and drank. He set the cup down with a soft ceramic sound. He looked up at Kim, and his eyes were the color of wet slate, and they missed nothing. "You have come with your hands full," the elder said in Korean. "I have come to give it back," Kim said. "Give what back?" "All of it." The elder held the silence a long moment. A gull cried somewhere below the bluff. The linen awning moved once in a small breeze and settled. "Explain," Park Do-yun said. Kim did not raise his voice. He did not soften it. He spoke the way a man reads a ledger to a man who already knows the numbers. "2 nights ago," he said, 3 of our people met in the office above the auction house on Rodeo. They discussed my former wife. They discussed her new partner. They spoke of a car accident on the Pacific Coast Highway. They spoke of a resolution that would bring her back to me through grief. They believed that I wanted this. They believed that this was service. They were not wrong to believe it. For 11 years, I let them believe that a woman's suffering was a currency the Baiko Pa was permitted to spend on my behalf. The elder did not move. Kim went on. "I am here to say that I was wrong to let them believe it. I am here to say that I will not permit it. Not through my order, not through my silence, not through any distance that would let another man's hand do what my hand refuses to do. If the Baiko Pa touches Daniel Foster, if the Baiko Pa touches Vanessa Montgomery, if the Baiko Pa touches the 2 children in that house or the child she carries, the Baiko Pa touches me first. I will make sure of it." He lifted his cup again, drank, set it down. "You come to threaten your own house," he said quietly. "I come to leave it," Kim said. "I come to hand back what was given. I have written on the portfolio the transfer papers for every operational account under my name. The flash drive contains the encrypted ledgers of the Beverly Hills chain, the Wilshire chain, the 2 San Gabriel houses, and the Long Beach shipping line. The paper contains a name and a phone number. The name is a federal prosecutor. The number reaches a woman who does not know I exist. If, within 30 days, the Baiko Pa has not dissolved its operational presence in the state of California, the paper and the drive will be delivered to the name on the paper by a courier who does not know what he is carrying and cannot be traced to me. If the Baiko Pa does dissolve, the paper burns. The drive burns. My silence continues for the rest of my life." He paused. He did not look away. "I am not asking for permission," he said. "I am telling you what will happen. I am telling you because I owe you the courtesy of the telling, and because I owe you nothing else." The elder was very still. On the bluff below, the gull cried again, and was answered by another gull farther out. Somewhere in the house, a clock struck the 1/4 hour. "You understand," Park Do-yun said at last, "what this house will owe you in return." "I understand," Kim said. "You understand that there is no version of this in which you keep the foundation, the mansion, the accounts, the standing. I have not come to keep any of it. You understand that men will be sent." "They may be sent," Kim said. "I have made arrangements. If I am killed within the year, the drive goes to the prosecutor, and the paper goes with it. If I am killed within 3 years, the same. I have divided the material and placed it with 3 people who do not know each other and who do not know what they hold. 2 of them are outside this country. The Baiko Pa cannot reach all of them. The Baiko Pa cannot reach any of them without exposing the reach itself. My death, from this morning forward, is the trigger." The elder looked at him a long time. Then, slowly, he inclined his head. It was not a bow. It was closer to the acknowledgement a chess player gives to a move he did not expect and cannot answer without losing the piece he most values. "You have thought about this," Park Do-yun said. I have thought about nothing else for 11 days. You do this for the woman. I do this because I built a house on top of her, and she could not breathe inside it. I do this because I did not know it until she was gone and pregnant with another man's child. I do this because the Bako Pa is prepared to end a man's life so that I can have her back through her grief, and there is no order and no silence I could give that would make that anything but what it is. And what is it? It is a monument to the thing I did not understand when I was married. The elder took the smallest breath. He looked out at the ocean. He looked back. There will be a meeting of the council, he said. In 7 days, you will not be present. You will remain at the mansion in Beverly Hills for those 7 days. You will not travel. You will not communicate with the woman. You will not attempt to warn Foster. If any of these conditions are broken, the arrangement fails and the consequence falls on you before the drive can leave your safe. Do you accept? I accept. On the 8th day, you will be informed of the council's decision. The Bako Pa will not touch Foster. The Bako Pa will not touch the woman. The Bako Pa will not touch the children. This much I can tell you now. The rest, you will learn. Go. Kim inclined his head. He did not rise yet. There is one more thing, he said. The elder waited. The Hihon Global Foundation, Kim said. The pediatric wing, the scholarships, the clinic on Vermont. These were built with clean money laid on top of dirty money, but the walls themselves are clean now. The children in those beds are real children. The doctors are real doctors. I ask permission to transfer the foundation in its entirety to an independent board. 3 members of my choosing, not one of them connected to this house. Once the transfer is complete, the foundation will operate outside any influence from any member of the Bako Pa, in perpetuity. I ask this as a personal request, not as an oyabun, as Hyunjae. The elder studied him. Something almost like a smile touched the corner of his mouth and did not stay. You are asking me for a gift, he said, on the day you take my house apart. I am asking you, Kim said, not to punish sick children for what a man did to his wife. The elder was quiet a long moment, then he nodded. Once, a small, dry nod. The foundation is yours to place, he said. Place it, and when you have placed it, do not go near it again. I will not. Now go. Kim rose. He bowed, the deep formal bow that was owed to an elder of the house at the moment a son leaves it for the last time, and he held the bow a full breath longer than the form required. Then he straightened. He turned. He walked back across the marble floor between the 2 men in dark suits, who did not bow this time because they did not yet know what had happened and would not know for 7 more days, and he stepped out into the pale Malibu morning and got into the car and closed the door. The driver looked at him in the mirror. Kim met the driver's eyes once. Home, Kim said. The car turned south along the coast. The ocean unspooled again on the right, brighter now, blue-green under a rising sun. Kim leaned his head against the window and closed his eyes and let the vibration of the road move through his skull. He did not sleep. He was empty in a way he had never been empty. He was also, for the first time in 11 years, unafraid. The 7 days passed the way certain kinds of grief pass, slow and without shape. He did not leave the mansion. He walked the halls. He sat in the study. He ate small meals that a housekeeper left on a silver tray and forgot to finish. He stood in the master bedroom he had not entered since the divorce, and he opened the closet where 3 garment bags still hung on the far rod, sealed in plastic, and he did not touch them. He closed the door. On the 3rd day, he called a lawyer in Pasadena, whose name he had held in reserve for a decade for exactly this kind of unraveling. The lawyer came at noon. They sat in the study with the portfolio open on the desk between them. Kim spoke for 2 hours. The lawyer wrote. The lawyer asked no questions except the ones that were procedural. When Kim was done, the lawyer closed his notebook and said only, "This will take 3 months to execute cleanly." "Take 3 months," Kim said. "Take 4. Only make sure that when it is done, none of it points back to her. None of it. Her name does not appear anywhere. Her children's names do not appear anywhere. The man she lives with does not appear anywhere. If any of them are ever asked where the gift came from, the answer must be that it came from a stranger. You want to be a stranger? I want to be a stranger." The lawyer looked at him for a long moment, then he nodded and gathered his papers and went. On the 5th day, Kim drove himself, without a driver, to a small office building in Koreatown that he had bought years ago through a shell and forgotten about. He climbed to the 4th floor. He unlocked a door. He walked through 3 empty rooms and opened the window at the end of the hall and looked down onto the street. A neon sign for a barbecue restaurant blinked below him, red and white. A woman was pushing a stroller along the sidewalk. 2 teenagers were arguing in Korean about a phone. He stood at the window for 20 minutes. Then he went back down to the car and drove home. On the 7th day, he woke at 4 in the morning and did not go back to sleep. He sat in the kitchen with a cup of black tea and watched the pool light throw its slow rings across the ceiling. His phone rang at 7. He answered without speaking. The voice on the other end was the same man who had answered the first call. "It is done," the man said in Korean. "The council has agreed. The 3 who met above the auction house have been removed from the Western operation and sent home. The order that was discussed will not be carried out. Foster is safe. The woman is safe. The children are safe. This is the extent of what you are permitted to know. Do you accept the terms of your departure?" "I accept," Kim said. "Then the Baeko Pa releases you. You are no longer of this house. You will vacate the Beverly Hills property within 30 days. All operational accounts under your control will be closed by end of month. The foundation transfer is permitted under the conditions you proposed. You will not contact any member of this house again. If a member of this house contacts you, you will not answer. The tiger on your neck is yours to keep. It is also yours to hide. Do you understand?" "I understand." The line went dead. Kim set the phone down on the marble counter. He sat very still. The pool light kept moving across the ceiling. Somewhere in the house, in a room he was not in, a clock ticked. Outside, a hummingbird hovered at a bougainvillea and moved on. He got up. He walked through the mansion room by room. 23 rooms. He looked at each one the way a man looks at a country he is leaving and will not return to. The dining room with its long lacquered table, where they had eaten 7 meals in 11 years. The library, with its wall of untouched leather spines. The nursery on the 2nd floor that he had built in the 3rd year of the marriage and never spoken of again, its walls a soft powder blue, its ceiling painted with a single sleeping crane. He stood in the doorway of the nursery for a long time. He did not enter. He closed the door. That afternoon he called the lawyer back. "The mansion," he said. "The Beverly Hills property. I want it transferred to the Hyung Global Foundation. Not to me. Not to any name I have used. Directly to the foundation. Once the foundation is under the independent board. Designate the property as a pediatric convalescent facility. 12 beds. Long-term care for children with chronic conditions whose families cannot afford extended stays. I want the deed transferred into a trust in the names of 2 children, Ethan Foster and Evelyn Foster. Ages 2. Address to be provided by separate courier. The trust holds the property on their behalf until they are 25. At that age, they may choose to sell it or to leave it in perpetuity with the foundation. Until then, the foundation operates the facility. Not $1 of income from the operation flows to any name I have used. Not $1 flows to me. Are we clear?" The lawyer was quiet a long moment on his end of the line. "You are giving the house," the lawyer said, "to 2 children who are not yours." "I am giving the house," Kim said, "to 2 children who deserve a house. Are we clear?" "We are clear. Draft it. Send me the documents to sign on the 10th day. Include a single anonymous letter to accompany the deed. 1 line, signed with the letter H. I will write it myself." "Understood." He ended the call. He walked to the window of the study and looked out at the garden he had once designed for a woman who had never asked for a garden. The koi were moving in slow circles under the surface of the small pond. A jacaranda was dropping its blue petals onto the grass. He watched the petals fall for a long time. He did not weep. He had not wept once in 11 days, and he did not weep now. Whatever moved in his chest was quieter than weeping and much older, and it did not need a face to leave through. On the 10th day, he signed the documents. On the 14th day, he moved out of the mansion. He took 2 suitcases. One contained clothes, the other contained a small wooden box that had belonged to his mother, a single photograph in a plain silver frame of a boy on a beach in Busan holding a shell, a pair of reading glasses, and nothing else. He left the art on the walls. He left the wine in the cellar. He left the cars in the garage. He handed the keys to the lawyer at the front gate and did not look back at the house as the car pulled away. The apartment in Koreatown was on the 4th floor of the small office building he had walked through on the 5th day. He had converted the front 2 rooms into a living space. A single low bed, a small teak table, 2 chairs, a kettle, a hot plate, a shelf with 4 books on it, a window that looked down onto the neon sign of the barbecue restaurant. He unpacked the suitcase. He set the wooden box on the shelf. He set the photograph beside it. He filled the kettle. He sat down in one of the chairs and watched the light change on the wall for an hour. And when it was fully dark, he did not turn on a lamp for a long time. That night, somewhere across the city, in a house on a quiet street with a jacaranda in the yard and a small blue swing set on the grass, a woman with a slight roundness under her powder blue dress was standing at the kitchen sink washing 2 small plastic plates, while a man in a linen shirt read a picture book to 2 children in a room down the hall. She did not know that a house had been signed into a trust in her children's names that morning. She did not know that a man she had once been married to was sitting in the dark on the 4th floor of a building in Koreatown with his hands folded on his knees. She was thinking, as she rinsed the second plate and set it on the drying rack, that the child inside her had begun to move in a new way in the last week, small deliberate turns like a fish testing a current. She rested one hand on her belly for a moment. She smiled without meaning to. She turned off the water. Kim, in the dark room in Koreatown, did not know that she smiled. He did not need to know. He had spent 11 years measuring what he owned by whether she was inside it, and he was done measuring. He listened to the barbecue restaurant below him send its small human sounds up through the floor. He listened to the city move through the summer night. After a long time he stood, and he crossed to the window, and he looked down at the neon sign, and he touched, once, with 2 fingers, the small black line of the tiger's tail, where it lifted above his collar toward his ear. Then he lowered his hand. He drew the thin curtain. He went to bed. Weeks passed. The foundation transfer moved through its slow legal channels. 3 names were placed on the new independent board, none of them known to any member of the Baco Pa. The mansion was emptied of its furniture and auctioned through a firm in Pasadena. Contractors began the conversion of the 23 rooms into a 12-bed convalescent facility. The pool was filled in and turfed. The nursery on the 2nd floor was left exactly as it was and repurposed as a quiet room for children who needed to sleep during the day. Kim did not visit. He took a night class to teach at a small private college in the valley. He walked to the bus stop. He walked back. He came home to the apartment in Koreatown and made a small dinner of rice and vegetables and sat by the window and read until the barbecue restaurant closed. He did not look for her. He did not drive past the house. He did not ask the lawyer about her. The lawyer called him on a Wednesday in the 5th month. "The deed is ready," the lawyer said. "The trust is executed. The property transfer is finalized. I need only the letter." Kim was standing at the window of the apartment. Below him, the neon sign was blinking in the late afternoon light. A woman was pushing a stroller along the sidewalk. He watched her cross the street. "I will bring it tomorrow," he said. He hung up. He sat down at the teak table. He took a single sheet of cream paper from a drawer and a black fountain pen from the small wooden box on the shelf. He uncapped the pen. He held it above the paper for a long moment. Then he wrote, in his small, precise hand, 1 line and 1 letter. "For the 2 who deserve a house. H." He capped the pen. He folded the paper once. He slid it into a plain white envelope and sealed it. He set the envelope in the center of the table and looked at it for a long time. Outside, the light was beginning to go. He got up. He filled the kettle. He put on water for tea, and while he waited for it to boil, he stood at the window and watched the city move into evening, and he did not think of anything at all. Somewhere across the city, in a garden he would never see, a woman 6 months pregnant in a powder blue dress was sitting on a wooden bench beside a man in a linen shirt, while 2 small children ran barefoot through the grass, chasing a large blue balloon that would not let itself be caught. The balloon lifted on a small breeze and drifted toward the fence. The girl reached for it and missed. The boy tried and missed. The woman laughed, one hand resting on the curve of her belly, and the man beside her laughed too, and the sun was low and gold, and the balloon lifted at last over the fence and went up into the wide, unclouded blue, and none of them looked away from it, and none of them thought of anyone else. If this story moved you, Stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been blamed for a wound that the person beside you was quietly inflicting? Have you ever walked away from a mansion carrying nothing, only to realize years later that walking away was the whole inheritance? And if you had the power to burn your own empire to set someone free, would your hands be steady enough to strike the match? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, freedom, and silent redemption, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel